Chapter 142. Wooden Hairpin. Seeing that Jiang Peihuan did not refute, the smile in Xiao Nanya's eyes deepened. At this moment, the stall owner who spoke earlier continued. Young master, your wife is really beautiful. The person who spoke was a young woman. Beside her was a young man who was concentrating on carving a hairpin in his hand. The two were clearly a couple. When the stall owner's husband saw someone coming over, he glanced at Xiao Nani and Jiang Peihuan. When he saw Jiang Peihuan, there was a hint of surprise in his eyes, but he quickly lowered his head to focus on his work. The stall owner looked very delicate and pretty. When she praised Jiang Peihuan's beauty, her tone was very sincere, making people involuntarily feel comfortable. Although Jiang Peihuan initially had no interest in these hairpins and accessories, but she became more patient at this moment. In comparison, Xiao Nani chose very carefully. Finally, the man reached out and picked up a wooden hairpin in the corner. The wooden hairpin was polished very smoothly, and there were not many decorations on it. But upon closer look, one could see a sentence carved on it. Seeing the sentence, Xiao Nani turned to Jiang Peihuan and asked, Huan heir, what do you think of this hairpin? The wooden hairpin was made of date wood, not worth much but well crafted. Upon hearing Xiao Nani's words, Jiang Peihuan nodded. Good. I'll take this wooden hairpin. As soon as Jiang Peihuan spoke, Xiao Nani took out a silver ingot and placed it on the stall. Then, before Jiang Peihuan could react, Xiao Nani inserted the wooden hairpin into her hair. Huan heir, look, this hairpin suits you very well. As he spoke, Xiao Nani had already presented a bronze mirror to Jiang Peihuan. The black wooden hairpin was inserted diagonally into Jiang Peihuan's hairbun, simple yet stylish. Xiao Nani had already given many jewels to Jiang Peihuan, but at this moment, looking at the wooden hairpin, she had a strange feeling. Looking at her reflection in the bronze mirror, Jiang Peihuan laughed softly. One like it very much. Hearing her words, the stall owner said with a smile, Young master, since your wife likes it, 111 give you back the change. No need. Hearing the stall owner's words, Xiao Nani casually responded, then led Jiang Peihuan away by the hand. The stall owner was stunned, and then said with a smile, Thank you, young master and madam. Husband, look, we've made a good profit today. The young man who had been busy carving the hairpin heard his wife's words, and nodded with a smile. Seeing this, Jiang Peihuan also smiled. Huan heir, am returning to Jingdou tonight. Jiang Peihuan, who was eating, looked surprised when she heard this. She looked at the man and whispered, You're leaving tonight? Yes. The man nodded and continued, There's been some trouble in the court recently. The emperor asked me to return. One understand. After that, neither of them talked about this matter again. By the evening, they had returned to the entrance of the Shui mansion. But Xiao Nani did not go in. Instead he turned to Jiang Peihuan and said, I won't go in to say goodbye to the old madam this time. Okay, I'll tell my grandmother. Deputy General Liu had already brought out the horse. Seeing him, Xiao Nani whispered, Take good care of your young mistress. Rest assured, your highness. Hearing Xiao Nani's words, Deputy General Liu bowed. Seeing this, Xiao Nani jumped onto his horse and pulled Jue Yun's reins. He gave Jiang Peihuan one last glance and patted Jue Yun's head. In an instant, Jue Yun started running. Watching the man ride away, Jiang Peihuan's eyes were a little complicated. When Xiao Nani's figure disappeared around the corner, Deputy General Liu, who was standing at the side, looked at Jiang Peihuan and said, Eldest miss, let's go inside. Yes. Jiang Peihuan nodded and turned to leave. For some reason, when she saw Xiao Nani leave, she felt a faint sense of reluctance. In the past, she never seemed to have this feeling. After returning to her room, Jiang Peihuan couldn't help but take off the wooden hairpin on her head. When she placed the hairpin in her hand, she noticed the words carved on it, Wish to win someone's heart, and to never be apart till old. Seeing these words, Jiang Peihuan's eyes showed a hint of tenderness, and her sense of loss seemed to have faded significantly. Xiao Nani, who had left the Shui mansion, was heading to the Jingdou. As soon as he left Qingzhou City, he saw Han Feng waiting there. Han Feng was ordered to wait here. Hearing the sound of horse hooves, he immediately looked up. Seeing the person on horseback, Han Feng was delighted. Master? Did anything happen in the Jingdo? Seeing Han Feng, Xiao Nani nodded and then asked softly. I've already made arrangements for Lin Xingchen and the others. As for the Prince Qing, other than gathering the funds, there seems to be no other movements. Hearing this, Xiao Nani frowned. But he didn't say anything. The master and servant both headed towards the Jingdo, while at this time, in the general's mansion, someone left quietly. An hour later, Pei Wu entered Xiao Junhao's study. Looking at the person reading, Pei Wu bowed and then spoke in a low voice. Your Highness, old Madame Jiang plans to visit Lingyun Temple tomorrow. Hearing this, Xiao Junhao put down his book. After a moment of silence, he spoke softly. One here, Jiang Peihuan and old Madame Jiang have a good relationship. I heard so. If something happens to old Madame Jiang, I suppose she'd be very upset, wouldn't she? To this, Pei Wu had no response. The study room was quiet for a moment before Xiao Junhao turned to Pei Wu and said, You'll handle this. Remember, this time only success is acceptable, no failure. Yes. General's Mansion. Chrysanthemum Hall. Mother, how about I accompany you to Lingyun Temple tomorrow? Shui Yin said softly as she looked at old Madame Jiang. But Madame Jiang shook her head. No need, one can go alone. You've been busy lately, no need to accompany me. As she spoke, old Madame Jiang glanced at Zhou Rongfang and Lu Xiao. Because of Jian Mai's affairs, Zhou Rongfang held some grudges against old Madame Jiang and remained silent. Lu Xiao, who had been ignored by old Madame Jiang due to Lu Xin's matters for several days, wanted to go but didn't dare to say anything. Old Madame Jiang frowned and said, All right, you can all go back now. A moment later, only old Madame Jiang was left in the Chrysanthemum Hall. The next morning, after having breakfast, old Madame Jiang boarded the carriage to Lingyun Temple. In the carriage, besides old Madame Jiang, there was also Granny Su. Old Madame, the third lady really respects you. Chapter 143. Lu Xian appears upon hearing Nanny's words. Old Madame Jiang said softly, Although I've been dissatisfied with her for so many years, I have to admit that she's indeed good, but... Old Madame, be careful. Before old Madame Jiang could finish her sentence, the carriage suddenly stopped. Seeing this, Nanny Su quickly supported old Madame Jiang, who almost bumped into something. Once old Madame Jiang steadied herself, Nanny Su questioned the driver. Old Lu, how did you drive the carriage? Don't you know that old Madame Jiang is in the carriage? As she spoke, Nanny Su directly lifted the curtain, but the scene in front made her face change immediately. What is this? Old Madame Jiang also saw the scene outside. A group of masked men suddenly appeared with knives. Old Lu had already left the carriage. The servants of the Jiang family all knew some martial arts, but they were not matched for these rogues who suddenly appeared. When old Lu was blocking the people from coming this way, he shouted at Nanny Su, Quickly take the old madam away. Well, stop them. Most of the servants in the Jiang family had lost their relatives in battles, and the Jiang family had taken them in. So these people were very loyal. Even though they knew they were no match for these people, they still asked Nanny Su to take old Madame Jiang away. Old Lu. But as old Lu finished speaking, he was slashed with a knife. Seeing this scene, Nanny's was full of worry, and old Madame Jiang's face turned uglier. Hurry up and leave. Old Lu shouted with all his might. Nanny Su, with tears in her eyes, held old Madame Jiang's hand and whispered, Old Madam, we should leave quickly. Think of leaving? It's not that easy. Just as they were about to turn around and leave, they saw two black-clad men coming this way. You, what do you want to do? My old madam is from the general's mansion. We're here for the people in the general's mansion. Two men were walking towards them. Nanny Su stepped in front of old Madame Jiang to protect her. But before she could finish speaking, the men stopped her with a cold voice. Upon hearing this, old Madame Jiang frowned. Pushing Nanny Su away, she looked at the two of them coldly. Who sent you here? Although old Madame Jiang felt extremely anxious inside, she was very calm. Seeing her composure, the earlier rogue laughed. The old madam from the Jiang family is truly something. Even facing death, she can still stay so calm. Hurry up and save them. Just as old Madame Jiang was about to speak, she heard a familiar voice. She turned to see Lu Xian, who had lifted the carriage curtain. Seeing Lu Xian stirred complex emotions within old Madame Jiang. Lu Xian was also planning to go to Lingyun Temple today, but had stumbled upon this scene instead. Fearing for Lu Xin's safety, the Lu family had hired quite a number of guards for her. These guards were not weak in martial arts, but they were still a bit inferior to these rogues. Besides, Lu Xian didn't bring many people with her. Seeing her side losing, Lu Xian directly walked over to old Madame Jiang and whispered, "Old Madam, it's too dangerous here, we should leave quickly." Saying this, Lu Xian led old Madame Jiang towards a small path. Seeing this, Nanny Su quickly followed. "Why are you here?" "Old Madam, now is not the time to talk about this. Let's think of a way to get out of danger first." Lu Xin's eyes were filled with fear, but she still tried her best to remain calm. Seeing her expression, old Madame Jiang said in a low voice, "Those people are here for me. This has nothing to do with you. You, old Madam, one can't ignore you." Lu Xian didn't dare to take the main road, so she took old Madame Jiang to the small road. At this moment, the three of them had already walked into a small forest. Seeing that there was no movement behind them, Lu Xian looked at Nanny Su and said, "Nanny, please take off the old madam's clothes." "Miss Lu, why is that? Those people might be chasing after us." "They'll wear the old madam's clothes and walk that way. You hide with the old madam somewhere else." While speaking, Lu Xian had already started to take off her cloak. When Nanny Su heard this, she immediately said, "Miss Lu, you don't look like the old madam. How about this? 111 put on the old madam's clothes, and you hide with the old madam." "Yuzhen." Old Madame Jiang's eyes were filled with worry when she heard Nanny's words. Nanny Su smiled. "One have served you my whole life. 1 am willing to die for you." As she spoke, Nanny Su had already put on the old madam's cloak. Seeing that she was about to leave, old Madame Jiang grabbed Nanny's hand tightly. "Be careful. Old madam, rest assured. I still have to take care of you, one won't die." Nanny Su reassured. She then bowed to Lu Xian. "Miss Lu, 111 entrusts my old madam to you. Don't worry, I'll definitely protect the old madam." Then the three of them split up. Lu Xian brought the old madam into the forest. It had been a long time since old Madame Jiang had walked so far. Soon, she started panting with exhaustion, but she persisted with gritted teeth. However, Lu Xian stopped when she heard old Madame Jiang's panting. After looking around at the environment, she squatted down in front of the old madam. "Old madam, we have to go deep into the forest, I will carry you." "How can you carry me with your weak body?" the old madam questioned. Lu Xin's figure was thin, while old Madame Jiang's figure was plump. However, Lu Xian laughed when she heard this. "Don't worry, old madam. One won't drop you. I used to go to the shop often, and one followed my elder brother to some places. My stamina is quite good." Old Madame Jiang could not walk anymore. Hearing Lu Xin's words, she lay on her back. "If you are tired, you must tell me." "Yes." Lu Xian nodded, and carried old Madame Jiang into the forest. The mountain path was extremely difficult to walk. After a while, a layer of sweat appeared on Lu Xin's forehead. Seeing the sweat on her forehead, old Madame Jiang's eyes revealed a complicated look. Lu Xian didn't know how long she had been walking. All she knew was they had to keep moving forward. However, she suddenly heard the sound of hurried footsteps. Hearing this voice, Lu Xin's expression changed. Lu Xian carefully put old Madame Jiang down and looked around. Then, she helped old Madame Jiang to walk behind a big tree. Breaking some branches, Lu Xian covered old Madame Jiang with them and whispered, "Old madam, stay here and don't come out. If someone comes, I'll lure them away." As Lu Xian was about to walk away, old Madame Jiang grabbed her hand. "Be careful," old Madame Jiang whispered when she saw Lu Xin's confused expression. Hearing the old madam's words, Lu Xian smiled. "Don't worry, I'll come and find you soon." Then, Lu Xian went down another path, deliberately leaving some traces on the branches behind her. Chapter 144. Jumping off the cliff. Not long after Lu Xian left, two men in black came over. Old Madame Jiang hid behind a tree and looked at the two men, clenching her hands tightly. "Over here." one of them said excitedly when he saw the traces left by Lu Xian. The other person looked at it and nodded. Let's go. Old Madame Jiang's eyes were full of worry as she watched the two of them chase after Lu Xian. She wanted to follow them, but was afraid of wasting Lu Xin's efforts meanwhile. Lu Xian had already reached the top of the mountain. Suddenly, she heard the sound of footsteps behind her and turned around to see two men in black running towards her. Her eyes were filled with panic. Then she fell to the ground in fear. It's not that old woman. The man who had caught up to her looked at Lu Xian on the ground and angrily said. The other person standing beside looked at Lu Xin's beautiful face and said, "How dare you ruin our plans? I'll teach you a lesson today." As he spoke, he moved toward Lu Xian and grabbed her ankle. Lao San, what are you doing? What am I doing? It's not easy to meet a young lady from a rich family every day. I heard these girls are all well-fed and well-clothed. I wonder how they taste compared to the women in the brothel, Lao San replied. Do you want to? The other man asked. Haha. The man called Lao San sneered and looked at Lu Xian. Lu Xian wasn't naive. From their conversation, she knew what the man was planning. When she saw the man's vicious look, her eyes were filled with fear. She raised her leg and kicked the man's hand away. Then, she ran towards the top of the mountain. Lao San was caught off guard and fell to the ground. The other man saw this and laughed mockingly. Lao San, can you handle it? Bitch, I'll kill you today. With a fierce look in his eyes, Lao San chased after Lu Xian. He picked up the knife in his hand and stabbed it at Lu Xin's calf. Oh! The sudden pain made Lu Xian fall to her knees. Seeing this, Lao San took out his long knife and taunted. Run! Why aren't you running now? Lu Xian was on the ground, crawling backward, leaving a trail of blood. Lao San, you go first, the other man said. Okay, I'll go first, Lao San replied, taking off his clothes. Lu Xin's face turned pale when she saw this. She looked around and realized that they were already at the top of the mountain. There was only one road in front of her and a cliff behind her. Looking at the people approaching her, Lu Xian could only pull out the golden hairpin on her head and aim the tip at her neck. Lu Xian said in a hoarse voice, Don't come any closer, or 111 kill myself in front of you. Ha ha ha. The man laughed as if he had heard a good joke, but his eyes were full of mockery. He looked at Lu Xian and said coldly, For so many years, I've only slept with living people. I've never tried dead ones. Why don't you satisfy me? You don't come any closer. Lu Xin's eyes were full of despair as Lao San approached her. Turning her head, Lu Xian looked at the cliff behind her. At this moment, Lu Xian thought of Jiang Changbai. Jiang Changbai, goodbye, she thought. Lu Xin's eyes filled with despair. At that moment, Jiang Changbai had already climbed halfway up the mountain, reaching the place where old Madame Jiang was hidden. Grandmother! Miss Lu! Old Madame Jiang was exhausted, but she didn't dare to move when the two men in black didn't come down. Hearing Jiang Shangbai's voice, old Madame Jiang excitedly called out, Changbai, over here, I'm here. Grandmother! Old Madame! Jiang Shangbai's men had already found Nanny Su, and upon seeing old Madame Jiang's disheveled appearance, Nanny Su burst into tears. Jiang Changbai tightly held onto the old madame's hand and asked softly, Grandmother, are you hurt? No, I'm not injured. That's good. Hearing old Madame Jiang's words, Jiang Changbai couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Grandmother, let's go. I'll take you down the mountain first. Saying this, Jiang Changbai bent down in front of old Madame Jiang, preparing to carry her down. However, old Madame Jiang shook her head and said, Changbai, you must go find Miss Lu first. She went up the mountain, and not long after she left, two rogue went up after her. I worry. Nanny Su, take good care of grandmother. Before old Madame Jiang could finish speaking, Jiang Shangbai's expression changed. He softly instructed Nanny Su, and then ran towards the mountaintop. On the mountaintop, Lu Xian was already in despair, and on the verge of collapse. However, Lao San's face was full of smiles. What's wrong? You can't do it. Lu Xin's hand, holding the hairpin, was trembling. When she saw Lao San approaching her, she suddenly got up from the ground and ran towards the cliff, jumping off. Lu Xian. The moment she jumped down, Lu Exan seemed to have heard Jiang Shangbai's voice, but very quickly she smiled, wondering why he would have come. However, the voice became clearer and clearer, and Lu Exan couldn't help but open her eyes, only to see a familiar face. The wind blew Jiang Shangbai's hair, and he reached out his hand, saying softly, "Don't be afraid, I'm here." As his words fell, Jiang Changbai reached out and held Lu Exan. The two of them were falling down straight. Jiang Changbai gripped Lu Exan tightly in his arms, his back facing the cliff. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a hint of green, and his eyes lit up. As they fell, he grabbed the green object. Their descent stopped suddenly. "It's all right, there's a tree here." Hearing Jiang Shangbai's words, Lu Exan looked at the tree in front of them. Although it was called a tree, it was actually a small sapling on the edge of the cliff. The trunk was only as thick as an arm. Jiang Changbai was holding onto the tree trunk, but the tree trunk was already shaking under the weight of the two of them. "I'm afraid this tree won't be able to hold our weight." "No matter." Looking at the height under his feet, Jiang Changbai looked at Lu Exan and said in a low voice, "Lu, Miss Lu, do you believe me?" He subconsciously wanted to call her by her name. Lu Exan did not know what Jiang Changbai had in mind, but hearing his words, she nodded. "I trust you. That's good." Hearing Lu Xin's words, a faint smile appeared in Jiang Shangbai's eyes. Then he let go of the tree trunk. The two of them started falling again. As they fell, Jiang Changbai pointed his toes. But when they landed, the momentum was too great, and they both fell on the ground. Chapter 145. Jiang Changbai arrives. The bottom of the cliff was full of rocks. When Jiang Changbai fell, his instinct was to hold Lu Exan close, cradling her in his arms. The two of them rolled for a long distance before they stopped. "Are you all right?" Both spoke simultaneously when they stopped. After a moment of silence, Jiang Changbai spoke first. "I'm fine. How are you?" "I'm also Lu Exan began to respond, but a sudden, sharp pain in her calf made her cry out. Jiang Changbai, following her gaze, noticed the blood staining her foot. Following her line of sight, Jiang Changbai saw the blood on her feet. He hurriedly crouched down to examine her wound, but she held his hand, stopping him. A hint of blush spread across her face. She felt embarrassed at the thought of Jiang Changbai lifting her skirt to check the injury. Misunderstanding her hesitation as fear of pain, he gently reassured her. "Don't worry, it'll be gentle. One won't hurt you." "I'm not scared of the pain, it's not appropriate." Her voice was barely audible by the end of her sentence. However, Jiang Shangbai's hearing was excellent, so he still heard it. As if he had thought of something, he stood up and then looked at Lu Exan, saying, "During special times, we need to make special exceptions. Most of the female members of my mother's Flying Feather Army are women. When they get injured on the battlefield, they also need timely treatment. If everyone is concerned about propriety, it would delay the treatment of many people." But when Lu Exan heard Jiang Shangbai's words, her eyes showed a hint of conflict and hesitation. "Let's leave this place first. It's about to get dark," Jiang Changbai said as he squatted down in front of Lu Exan. "Your leg is injured and you can't walk. I'll carry you." Although Lu Exan was still somewhat hesitant, Jiang Changbai had already gripped her hand, effortlessly hoisting her onto his back. This was the first time he had ever carried a woman other than his sister. Lu Exan was so light, he could hardly feel her weight. Even in the wilderness, she found comfort in Jiang Shangbai's presence. Jiang Mansion, Chrysanthemum Hall. "Doctor, how is she?" The old madam had already been taken to Chrysanthemum Hall, and Shui Yin immediately had someone fetch a doctor. She looked at the doctor who came out from the inner hall and hurriedly asked, "First madam, don't worry. The old madam was just startled and has already fallen asleep. There's nothing serious," the doctor reassured her. "That's good. Mother, should we inform eldest sister about this?" The person who spoke was Jiang Xijin. After she heard the news of the old madam's accident, she immediately left the military camp with Jiang Changbai. Hearing her younger daughter's words, Shui Yin nodded. "Even though your grandmother is fine, we should still inform Huan Heir. Xijin, get someone to send a letter to Qingzhou." "I understand, mother." After Jiang Xijin left, Shui Yin did not leave Chrysanthemum Hall, but stayed outside. Besides Shui Yin, there was also Lu Xiu guarding outside. Knowing that Lu Xan had an accident, Lu Xiu's eyes were full of worry. Seeing the expression in her eyes, Shui Yin stepped forward and comforted her softly. "Third sister, don't worry. Changbai will definitely find Xian heir and bring her back safely." "I know. Thank you, sister," Lu Xiu replied gratefully. In the mountains, Jiang Changbai and Lu Xian had already settled in a cave. Jiang Changbai lit a fire and sat down in front of Lu Xian before finally speaking to her. "If we don't treat the wound on your leg soon, it might get infected." "I'll help you treat the wound first," Changbai offered. "Okay," Lu Xian nodded. With her approval, Jiang Changbai gently lifted her leg onto his lap. He raised her skirt and rolled up her trousers to examine her wound. Jiang Changbai had only seen the blood on her skirt previously. Now that he saw the wound on her calf, Jiang Changbai subconsciously frowned. He had seen many serious injuries before, but Lu Xin's fair skin made the palm-sized wound on her calf look particularly gruesome. "It might hurt a bit, so bear with it," Jiang Changbai said. She nodded again. Seeing her nod, Jiang Changbai cleaned the blood around the wound with a wet handkerchief and applied a common medicinal powder. "Oh!" As soon as Jiang Changbai sprinkled the medicine on the wound, he felt a sharp pain in his arm. It turned out that Lu Xian had gripped his arm tightly. "I'll be over soon," he reassured her, continuing to treat the wound despite the urgency in his eyes. After he bandaged the wound, Jiang carefully adjusted Liu's trousers back into place. "Done," he said. Hearing him, Lu Xian relaxed her grip on his arm, causing him to wince in response. Her face flushed with embarrassment at her strength. "I'm sorry," she said. "No worries, I can handle it," he replied. "Although I have already applied medicine to your wound, your injury is still severe. You should see a doctor when we get back," Jiang Changbai said. "It's okay. As long as you've put on medicine, there's no need for a doctor." Lu Xian could still convince herself to let Jiang Changbai apply medicine on her, but she couldn't bear the thought of other men seeing her leg. Jiang Changbai immediately understood what Lu Xian meant. Upon hearing her words, he said softly, "It's okay. I'm sure my mother will send a message to Huan Heir, since my grandmother was frightened. Huan Heir's maid has medical skills. She can examine you when we get back." Didn't Sister Jiang go to Qingzhou? It would take at least 2 to 3 days to travel back and forth from Qingzhou, Lu Xian said. "In Qingzhou, Yi Xiao, has all the poison in my grandmother's body been removed?" Looking at Yi Xiao, who was examining her grandmother, Lu Yuni asked softly. After withdrawing her hand, Yi Xiao nodded. "Yes, all the poison have been removed from the old madam's body. She just needs a good rest now." "Huan Heir, it's all thanks to you this time." "Yeah, Huan Heir, without your maid, who knows what would have happened to your grandmother?" As Jiang Peihuan listened to the words of Xue Tao and Xue Hai, she smiled and said, "Uncle Tao, Uncle Hai, it's what one should do. There's no need for such formalities." "Okay, it's getting late. Let Huan Heir rest now." With the absence of Wang Fengyi and Xue Ru, the entire Xue family was harmonious. Hearing the conversation between Jiang Peihuan and the others, old Madame Xue said softly. As soon as Madame Xue spoke, everyone started urging Huan Heir to rest. "Grandmother, I'll go back first," Jian Peihuan said softly after she bowed to old Madame Xue. Leaving old Madame Xue's courtyard with Yi Xiao, Jiang Peihuan had just reached her own courtyard when she saw an anxious Deputy General Lu approaching. "Eldest Miss, something happened." "What's wrong?" "There's news from the mansion. It's said that the old madam was attacked." Chapter 146. Returning to the capital, what did you say? Upon hearing Deputy General Liu's words, Jiang Peihuan's face fell instantly. Deputy General Lu didn't say anything. Instead, he handed the note in his hand to Jiang Peihuan. The note was written by Jiang Xijin and sent by pigeon. Knowing that the old madam was fine, Jiang Peihuan heaved a sigh of relief, but she was still a little worried. Seeing the change in Jiang Peihuan's eyes, Deputy General Lu spoke softly. "Miss Jiang, should we return to the mansion? I believe Madame Xue would understand your reasons and not blame you." Upon hearing Deputy General Liu's words, Jiang Peihuan lapsed into a pensive silence. After a moment, she replied in a gentle whisper, "It's rather late today. One wouldn't want to disturb my grandmother. Well, bid her farewell tomorrow morning. Yi Xiao, prepare a list of all the medicinal herbs required for my grandmother's recuperation. I'll hand it to my second aunt tomorrow." Understood, eldest Mississippi. As her mind was preoccupied, Jiang Peihuan had a restless night. By the break of dawn, she quickly freshened up and, with Yi Xiao in tow, made her way to old Madame Xue's courtyard. Since the elderly typically required less sleep, old Madame Xue was already up by the time Jiang Peihuan arrived. Seeing Jiang Peihuan arrive so early brought a warm smile to old Madame Xue's face. "Huan heir, why have you come so early? Haven't Yi Xiao assured that my body is perfectly fine? Grandmother, 1 a.m. here to bid you farewell." "Farewell? You're heading back to Jingdou? One thought you were planning to stay with me for a while longer." Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Madame Xue's eyes began to well up with tears. Seeing old Madame Xue like this, Jiang Peihuan felt a pang in her heart. Gently taking her grandmother's hand, she murmured, "Grandmother, my other grandmother was attacked in Jingdou." "Attacked? Was your grandmother injured?" Upon hearing about the assault on old Madame Jiang, old Madame Xue's eyes filled with concern. Seeing her worry, Jiang Peihuan quickly reassured her. "Please don't worry, grandmother. My other grandmother is not severely injured. She was merely startled." "Well, that's a relief. Since your grandmother was attacked, you should go back." "Who's going back?" Old Madame Xue had barely finished her sentence when Xueqi's voice echoed from the entrance. Upon seeing him, a spark of hope ignited in old Madame Xue's eyes. "Huan heir, am not at ease with you returning to Jingdou alone. How about this? Let Xueqi escort you back." "Huan heir, you're returning to Jingdou? Why not stay longer in Qingzhou?" After learning of the situation from old Madame Xue, Xueqi struck his chest, saying, "In that case, 111 escort Huan heir back to Jingdou. One haven't seen my aunt for a while." "Grandmother, how about asking mother to prepare some items from Qingzhou? I can bring them to my aunt. She hasn't been back to Qingzhou for many years. She probably misses it a lot." "Yes, indeed. Have people prepare more items for Yin heir as well, including things for the old madam of the Jiang family, and the other two madam." Shortly after, everyone from the Xue family arrived. Jiang Peihuan took the medical prescription from Yi Xiao's hand and directly passed it to Su Yunyang. Then quietly said, "Second aunt, this prescription contains the medicines my grandmother needs for recuperation. I'll have to trouble you in this time." "You child, since when have you become so formal with me? Huan heir, you need not worry about your grandmother. We will take good care of her. As for you, I don't know when I'll be able to see you again in Jingdou." Xue Tao, a strapping man, unexpectedly had red-rimmed eyes at this moment. "All right, when Huan heir's grand wedding comes around, we'll be heading to the Jingdou anyway." "That's right. Huan heir will be getting married in 2 months." Upon mentioning this, the spirits of everyone from the Xue family lifted again. By the time Jiang Peihuan left the Xue family, it was already afternoon. Aside from the 4 of them, there were also 3 large carriages filled with items the Xue family had prepared for Xue Yan, and the others in the Jiang family. Although Jiang Peihuan was eager to return to the Jingdou, she didn't decline these items, as they were a testament to old Madame Xue's maternal love. However, traveling with 3 carriages made the journey extremely slow. After they left Qingzhou City, Jiang Peihuan immediately turned to Deputy General Liu and said, "Cousin Qi and I will go ahead with Yi Xiao. You follow behind at a slower pace, ensuring these items get back home." "Yes, eldest Mississippi." Deputy General Liu had no objections to Jiang Peihuan's arrangement. Thereafter Jiang Peihuan, with Xueqi and Yi Xiao, set out towards Jingdou. Xueqi rode at Jiang Peihuan's left. Seeing her atop her horse, he softly chuckled. "Huan heir, one never knew your horsemanship was so skilled." "Cousin Qi, did you forget I've been to the battlefield as well?" Hearing Xueqi's comment, Jiang Peihuan chuckled softly in response. "I actually did forget, but hearing you say it brings back memories. By the way, Huan heir, is there anything fun to do in Jingdou these days?" Both Jiang Peihuan and Xueqi were skilled horse riders, which allowed them to carry on their conversation while on horseback. The trip from Qingzhou to Jingdou, even if they traveled fast, it would still required around 2 days. But Jiang Peihuan, Xueqi, and Yi Xiao arrived at the general's mansion late at night. Yi Xiao knocked on the door. The door of the general's mansion was tightly shut. Hearing Jiang Peihuan's command, Yi Xiao dismounted and knocked on the door. The door quickly opened, and the gatekeeper, upon seeing Jiang Peihuan on her horse, quickly came forward to pay his respects. "Eldest miss, you're back? Have elder brother and Miss Lu returned?" In Jiang Saijin's letter, Jiang Peihuan already knew that Lu Xian had saved old Madame Jiang. Upon hearing Jian Peihuan's question, the gatekeeper nodded and quickly said, "Eldest young master and Miss Lu are back. They came back just this afternoon." "Understood, thank you." With a nod, Jiang Peihuan led Xueqi into the mansion. Upon entering the courtyard, Jiang Peihuan turned to Xueqi and said, "Cousin Qi, it's rather late. I'll take you to see grandmother tomorrow. Rest early for tonight. I will guide you to elder brother's garden for rest. Just have a servant lead me there. You've had a long day too. You should rest early." "I'm not tired. I'll take you there." Saying so, Jiang Peihuan led Xueqi towards Jiang Shengbai's courtyard. As they arrived at Jiang Shengbai's courtyard, they found the lights within still lit. Jiang Peihuan and Xueqi shared a glance and stepped inside together. "Elder brother? Huaner, you're back. All Qi?" Upon hearing a noise, Jiang Changbai immediately opened his door. Seeing Jiang Peihuan, his eyes lit up with a smile. But when he noticed Xueqi standing next to her, his eyes shone with pure excitement. "Changbai, it's been too long," said Xueqi. Xueqi stepped forward, delivering a playful punch to Jiang Changbai, and two of them hugged each other. Watching this warm reunion, Jiang Peihuan also displayed a hint of a smile. Jiang Changbai and Xueqi were born only a few hours apart. This led to them never addressing each other as brothers. Instead, they preferred to call each others by their names. Chapter 147. Return from Qingzhou. "I'm going to stay in the mansion for a few days. Let's find a time to spar," Xueqi said. "All right, no problem," Jiang Changbai replied with a smile. Jiang Changbai smiled as he heard Xueqi's proposal. Such was the bond of male friendship. Witnessing the camaraderie, a smile appeared on Jiang Peihuan's face. She softly said to her brother, "Elder brother, since you're here, I'll leave cousin Qi in your care. I'm off to visit Xian Heir at our third aunt's courtyard." "Are you going to see Miss Lu?" "Yes, she's injured, isn't she? I'm taking Yi Xiao with me to see her." "In that case, 111 accompany you." Just as Jiang Changbai offered to go with her, Jiang Peihuan was quick to object. "Elder brother, it's quite late now. It's not appropriate for you to visit Xian Heir. Grandmother already disapproves of your relationship with Xian Heir. If you visit her at this hour, and if she hears about this visit, it will only make things worse for Xian Heir." Hearing this, Jiang Changbai frowned, but he knew that what Jian Peihuan said was correct. He did not say anything but nodded. "All right, then I'll bring Qi inside. Don't worry, if anything happens to Xian Heir, I'll send someone to inform you," Jiang Peihuan assured. "Okay." Seeing her nod, Jiang Peihuan bowed to Xueqi. "Cousin, sorry for the inconvenience. 111 come find you again tomorrow." "Sure, go handle your business. I'll be just fine." Hearing this, Xueqi waved his hand dismissively and followed Jiang Changbai into the courtyard. As he watched Jiang Peihuan leave, Xueqi took hold of Jiang Shengbai's hand. "Changbai, it seems like you have a special place in your heart for Xian Heir. Is she the one you fancy?" Xueqi was just being inquisitive, but Jiang Changbai, surprisingly, nodded in agreement. "Indeed, she's the one I have feelings for." "Which family is she from? And what is her personality like?" Seeing Jiang Changbai nod, the curiosity sparked in Xueqi's eyes. Always eager and curious, Xueqi, considering Jiang Changbai his close friend, eagerly asked more. Given the circumstances surrounding Lu Xian, Jiang Changbai felt somewhat disheartened. When Xueqi asked, he explained the details of his situation with Lu Xian. Xueqi listened attentively without interrupting. Seeing Jiang Shengbai's distress, he couldn't help but offer some advice. "Changbai, If you have feelings for Miss Liu, why not have aunt and uncle propose a marriage? There's no need to be so troubled. On hearing Xueqi's suggestion, Jiang Changbai shot him a helpless look and replied, "The Liu family is a merchant family after all. The Jiang family is quite sensitive by nature. If one were to marry her, it would stir up unnecessary doubts and suspicions. Moreover, grandmother will definitely not allow it." But in the end, all these are mere external factors. Seeing Jiang Shangbai's puzzled expression, Xueqi continued, "Even if you don't marry Miss Liu, the Jiang family will still be walking on eggshells. As for old Madame Jiang, this is a matter of your marriage. If you insist, I think old Madame Jiang will eventually agree." Xueqi grew up in Qingzhou, where the local people had a strong and fierce nature. Therefore, the things that Jiang Changbo was concerned about didn't seem like a big deal to him. Hearing Xueqi's words, Jiang Changbai fell silent. Xueqi didn't pay attention to the fact that Jiang Changbo didn't respond, and went straight into the room, saying, "Tonight, I will sleep in your room." Jiang Peihuan did not know about the conversation between Xueqi and Jiang Changbai. At this moment, she had already brought Yi Xiao into Elegant Garden. Lu Xiao was also in Lu Xin's room. When she saw the injury on her leg, Lu Xiao's eyes were filled with worry. Such a severe injury. What if it leaves a scar? Lu Xian, sitting on the bed, replied nonchalantly, "Aunt, don't worry, even if it leaves a scar, it's not a big deal." "Don't talk nonsense. You're a girl. How can there be scars on your body?" "Third aunt, don't worry. I won't let Xian Air have any scars." Upon hearing the voice, Lu Xian and Lu Xiao simultaneously turned towards the entrance. Seeing Jian Peihuan entering, both of them smiled. "Huan Air. Sister Jiang." Jiang Peihuan stepped forward and bowed to Lu Xiao. Then, she looked at Lu Xian and said softly, "Xian Air, thank you so much. Sister Jiang, you're making a big deal out of it. I didn't do much." Hearing this, Jiang Peihuan did not say anything else. Instead, she looked at Yi Xiao and said, "Examine the injury on Miss Liu's leg." Yi Xiao walked forward and sat down by the bed to unwrap the bandage on Lu Xin's leg. Upon seeing the wound, Jiang Peihuan's eyes flashed with a bit of surprise. Time had done little to soothe the injury. The once fresh wound was now an alarming white. Under the lamplight, it was a harrowing sight. Is it really this severe? Lu Xiao wasn't around when Lu Xian was treating her wound, so when he saw the wound on her leg, Lu Xiao's eyes were filled with concern and worry. Yi Xiao carefully checked Lu Xin's wound and reapplying medication before expertly rebandaging it. After Yi Xiao finished bandaging, Lu Xiao quickly said, "Yi Xiao, tell me, will the injury leave a scar on Xian Air's leg? Miss Liu's wound is quite deep. Once it heals, it's likely to leave a scar," Yi Xiao explained. "A scar?" Lu Xiao's expression changed instantly. Lu Xian, in spite of her attempts to reassure Lu Xiao, was understandably upset. The prospect of a scar on her leg brought a touch of sorrow to her eyes. Seeing that they were all upset, Jiang Peihuan looked at Yi Xiao and asked, "Can the scar be removed with Shuhen glue?" "It could, but only Miracle Dr. Ivy can make it. However, he has always been missing." "It's fine. One have a way." In her past life, by pure chance, Jiang Peihuan had learned how to make Shuhen gel. However, now was not the time to disclose it. After she finished speaking, Jiang Peihuan reassured Lu Xiao, "Third aunt, there's no need to worry. I will bring over the Shuhen gel later. With it, Xian Air's leg won't have any scars." "Huan Air, thank you." Lu Xiao did not find it strange that Jiang Peihuan could get the Shuhen glue. After all, King Cheng's fondness for Jiang Peihuan was common knowledge among the members of the Jiang mansion. "Third aunt, there's no need for such formality with me." With that, Jiang Peihuan turned to Lu Xian. "Xian Air, I need to head back now. Tomorrow morning, I'll bring Yi Xiao to change your bandage." "All right, Sister Jiang, please take care." Jiang Peihuan bid farewell to Lu Xiao, then left the Elegant Garden. Given the late hour, Jiang Peihuan decided not to visit Yin Lin and disturb Shui Yan. Instead, she returned directly to her own courtyard. Upon entering the plum garden, she noticed the light in her room was already lit. Without a second thought, Jian Peihuan had already guessed who it was. Regardless of whether it was Yu Er or Lu Er, they were now very used to Xiao Nani coming to the plum garden at night. Chapter 148. Warm desserts. Therefore, when Jiang Peihuan walked into the room, she saw a man sitting at the table reading a book. "You're back." When Jian Peihuan walked into the courtyard, Xiao Nani heard her footsteps. When she walked into the room, the man put down the book in his hand. "When did you arrive?" Jiang Peihuan walked towards the man and spoke softly. "An hour ago." As he spoke, the man took out an oiled paper bag from in front of him and placed it on the table. Xiao Nani said softly, "One guessed that you probably didn't eat anything properly on your way here. So I brought some desserts for you. Try it." The man carefully opened the oiled paper bag. Jiang Peihuan saw the snow-white dessert inside. It was osmanthus cake. Jiang Peihuan wasn't hungry at first, but when she saw the desserts on the table, she suddenly felt a little hungry. She sat down next to the man and picked up a piece of dessert and took a bite. It wasn't very sweet, but it had a light fragrance that Jiang Peihuan liked. The dessert was still warm, and Jiang Peihuan felt a warm current flow through her heart when she thought that Xiao Nani had kept the dim sum warm against his chest. She selected another piece of dessert, offering it to the man. "This dessert is rather good. Would you like to?" Before she could finish her sentence, Xiao Nani opened his mouth and ate the cake from her hand. His lips brushed against her fingertips, and Jiang Peihuan felt as if she had been electrocuted. She quickly withdrew her hand. Seeing her reaction, Xiao Nani smiled and said softly, "The dessert is indeed delicious." Jiang Peihuan felt that the man's words seemed to have a hidden meaning, but she wasn't sure. After eating a few pieces of the dessert, Jiang Peihuan no longer felt hungry. Just as she was about to speak, she couldn't help but yawn. Xiao Nani looked up and saw the fatigue in her eyes. He said, "It's getting late, Huan Er. You should rest early. I'll leave first." Xiao Nani had originally planned to chat with Jiang Peihuan, but when he saw the fatigue in her eyes, he didn't say anything. Jiang Peihuan was indeed tired from the journey from Qingzhou. She nodded when she heard Xiao Nani's words. A moment later, Xiao Nani left Jiang Peihuan's room. Han Feng was still on the tree outside the courtyard. When he heard the sound, he jumped down. He landed next to Xiao Nani and couldn't help but ask, "Master, why did you come out so early today? Did eldest miss chase you out?" When Xiao Nani heard Han Feng's words, he gave him a cold glance and then said coldly, "What? Are you saying that Huan Er is difficult to deal with?" Seeing Xiao Nani's threatening expression, Han Feng quickly shook his head. "How can that be? Eldest miss is the gentlest woman I've ever met." "Humph." Xiao Nani snorted and turned around to leave the plum garden. Seeing this, Han Feng hurriedly followed, but he did not dare to say anything else. Instead, he silently shut his mouth. Although old Madame Xue took great care of Jiang Peihuan in the Xue mansion, she still couldn't adapt to the new environment, so she didn't sleep well during her stay there. When she returned to her familiar place, Jiang Peihuan slept soundly. Yu Er knew that Jiang Peihuan was tired, so she didn't let the little maids in the courtyard disturb her. When Jiang Peihuan woke up, it was already late morning. When she opened her eyes, Jiang Peihuan was still a little dazed. "Eldest miss, are you awake?" Yu Er was guarding the door. When she heard the commotion inside, she spoke in a low voice. Hearing Jian Peihuan's voice from inside, Yu Er pushed the door open and walked in. Yu Er placed the toiletries in her hand on the shelf before walking towards Jiang Peihuan. Jiang Peihuan had already sat upright when she awoke and noticed Yu Er. She asked softly, "What time is it now? Why didn't you wake me?" "Eldest miss, you had a tiring day yesterday. One thought it best to let you rest well through the night," responded Yu Er. As they spoke, Yu Er had neatly arranged Jiang Peihuan's clothes by her side. With Yu Er's assistance, Jian Peihuan changed into a set of elegant green attire. Yu Er moistened the handkerchief and wrung it out before offering it to Jiang Peihuan. Accepting the handkerchief from Yu Er, Jiang Peihuan gently patted her face with it before handing it back. "Eldest miss, do you want to have breakfast?" Yu Er asked. Perhaps due to eating the desserts last night, Jiang Peihuan didn't feel hungry. Thinking about the conversation she had with Lu Xian last night, she shook her head and said, "No need. Go and call Yishao. I'll go to Third Aunt's courtyard to check on Xian Air. As you wish. Moments later, Jiang Peihuan, accompanied by Yishao, made her way towards Lu Xiu's elegant garden. When she reached the entrance of the courtyard, Jiang Peihuan saw a few maids standing guard by the door. Jiang Peihuan instinctively quickened her pace. Just as she reached Lu Xin's room, she heard Lu Xiu's anxious words. Mother, don't worry. I will send Xian Air back to the Lu family as soon as possible. No hurry. Before Lu Xiu could finish, old Madame Jiang interrupted her softly. Lu Xiu was stunned when he heard the old madam's words. Not only Lu Xiu was surprised, but Jiang Peihuan also showed a hint of surprise. However, when she thought about the reason why Lu Xian got injured this time, Jiang Peihuan felt relieved. Jian Peihuan understood her grandmother. Although old Madame Jiang had a rigid personality, she was also kind-hearted. Regardless of the circumstances, Lu Xian had saved her life. So old Madame Jiang wouldn't kick Lu Xian out. As expected. Seeing Lu Xiu's confused expression, old Madame Jiang said softly, No matter what, Miss Lu was injured while trying to save my life. How can I kick her out at this time? Grandmother, you are truly kind-hearted. Upon hearing the voice, old Madame Shui quickly turned around and saw Jiang Peihuan striding in. The old madame's eyes were full of smiles, and she quickly held Jiang Peihuan's hand. My dear, when did you come back? I came back last night, but it was already late. I didn't wish to disturb you, grandmother. When I heard that grandmother was attacked in Qingzhou, one immediately rushed back. You must have suffered greatly during this ordeal, grandmother. Noticing the concern in Jiang Peihuan's eyes, old Madame Jiang felt a surge of warmth within her. She gently patted Jiang Peihuan's hand, her voice soft. I am fine. This time, we owe a great deal to Miss Lu. If not for her, I fear my life would have been in the hands of the King of Hell. Grandmother, don't speak such nonsense. You are blessed and destined to live a long life. Well. If Huan Heir believes that I will live a century, then I shall strive to do so. Yishao, please help Xian Heir change her bandages. Understood. After speaking with old Madame Jiang, Jiang Peihuan asked Yishao to help Lu Xian change her bandages. Will this wound leave a scar? Lu Xiu had already seen the wound on Lu Xin's leg yesterday, so she was mentally prepared today. However, it was the first time for old Madame Jiang to see it. Follow current novels on Top Novel.com. Chapter 149. The old madame's change of attitude seeing the palm-sized wound. The old madame's eyes were filled with worry. Don't worry, old madame. The wound may appear severe, but it's just a flesh wound. It won't leave any scars. Just as Jiang Peihuan was about to speak, she heard Lu Xin's voice. Upon hearing Lu Xin's words, old Madame Jiang heaved a sigh of relief. However, when she looked at Yishao, she still said softly, Go ahead and treat Miss Lu. If you need any medicinal herbs, just take them from the mansion. Yes, old madam. Thank you, old madam. Upon hearing old Madame Jiang's words, Lu Xian, who was leaning against the headboard, quickly expressed her gratitude. Hearing Lu Xin's words, old Madame Jiang looked at Lu Xiu and said, During this period of time, let Miss Lu stay in the mansion to recuperate. Also prepare a gift of thanks. I will personally visit your brother to thank him in the future. Mother, there's no need for that. Xian Heir is part of the younger generation. No matter who it is, they should help when they encounter such a thing. There's no need for you to personally visit. Upon hearing Lu Xiu's words, the look in old Madame Jiang's eyes became much better, but she still insisted. Miss Lu has saved my life. It's only proper that I personally express my thanks. Seeing Lu Xiu about to protest, Madame Jiang turned to Jiang Peihuan and said, Huan Heir, please escort me back. Yes. Jiang Peihuan respectfully bowed to Lu Xiu, gave a nod to Lu Xian before reaching out to support old Madame Jiang. When they were about to reach the Chrysanthemum Hall, Jiang Peihuan thought of Xueqi. She quickly looked at old Madame Jiang and said, Grandmother, when one came back this time, grandmother asked cousin Qi to escort me. He is still waiting in eldest brother's courtyard to meet you. I will go and bring him over now. You silly girl. How can you neglect the guest? Go get him quickly. Upon hearing old Madame Jiang's words, Jiang Peihuan hurriedly ran to Jiang Shangbai's courtyard. Arriving there, she found the pair engrossed in a sparring match. It seemed their sparring match from last night had escalated into a real fight today. Seeing that the two of them were fighting, Jiang Peihuan did not interrupt, but chose to watch from the side. After all, both Jiang Changbai and Xueqi had extensive battlefield experience and formidable martial arts skills. "Eldest miss, you're here." When Chang'an saw Jiang Peihuan, he quickly brought over a cup of tea. Accepting the tea, Jiang Peihuan asked softly, "How long have elder brother and cousin Qi been fighting?" "From this morning until now." Hearing Chang'an's response, Jiang Peihuan's eyes reflected a touch of helplessness. She took a sip of her tea, handed the cup back to Chang'an and shouted, "Elder brother, cousin Qi, stop fighting. Grandmother is waiting for you." Hearing Jian Peihuan's words, Xueqi and Jiang Changbai stopped. Xueqi raised his hand to wipe the sweat from his forehead. Then he looked at Jiang Changbai and said, "I thought that you would definitely neglect your martial arts after returning to Jingdo. I didn't expect you to improve so much." "You're not falling short either," Jiang Changbai replied. By the time the two of them followed Jiang Peihuan to the Chrysanthemum Hall, it was already half a cup of tea's time later. Old Madame Jiang sat at the main seat. When she saw the two young men walking in together, her eyes beamed with delight. Little Xueqi pays his respect to Old Madame. Looking at Xueqi, who was bowing to her, Old Madame Jiang hurriedly said, "Quick, get up." Once Xueqi stood upright, Madame Jiang gestured at her side and said with a smile, "I remember the first time I saw you. You were just a child. Now look how much you've grown. I heard from Huan Er that old Madame Xue's body has been unwell recently. Is she feeling better now?" "Old Madame, grandmother's body is already much better, all thanks to the servant girl by Huan Er's side." Initially, one intended for Huan Er to stay with old Madame Xue for a while longer, but unfortunately, I encountered such an unexpected incident. "Old Madame, your concern is appreciated. However, when Huan Er's wedding takes place, my grandmother will be coming to Jingdo. You will have a chance to meet then." "Yes, at that time, I will definitely pay a visit and have a heart-to-heart talk with old Madame Xue. Grandmother will definitely be happy to see old Madame." Madame Jiang had always held a fondness for Xue Yan. In addition to Xueqi's courtesy and generosity, a warm smile hardly left the old madame's face. Looking at Xueqi, old Madame Jiang smiled and said, "It's rare for you to come here, so you should stay in the mansion for a while. Your aunt and uncle often go to the military camp. You can get Huan Er and Changbai to take you around Jingdo." "Indeed, that's my intention as well," Xueqi responded. Seeing that the old madame and Xueqi were chatting very well, Jiang Peihuan quickly said, "Grandmother, I'm hungry. Why don't you let Nanny Su prepare lunch?" Jian Peihuan did not dare to say that she had not eaten breakfast yet. Hearing Jiang Peihuan say that she was hungry, old Madame Jiang quickly looked at Nanny Su and said, "You Zhen, quick, hurry up and get someone to prepare lunch." After Nanny Su left, old Madame Jiang looked at Xueqi and said, "Qi, why don't you have lunch in my courtyard today?" "Yes, then you'll have to trouble old Madame." The old madam was used to taking an afternoon nap, so after lunch, Jiang Peihuan and the other two left the Chrysanthemum Hall. When they walked out of the courtyard, Jiang Peihuan suddenly looked at Jiang Changbai and said, "Elder brother, one feared the recent attack on grandmothers was no mere coincidence. We must thoroughly investigate the matter." There were many people from the Jingdo who went to Lingyun Temple to offer incense, and most of them were high officials and nobles, so that road was very peaceful. The sudden emergence of bandits, Jiang Peihuan deduced, hinted at an underlying conspiracy. Hearing Jian Peihuan's words, Jiang Changbai nodded in response. "Father and mother have already handed this matter over to me. I have also started the investigation. I believe that there will be news soon." As soon as Jiang Changbai finished speaking, he saw Yi Xiao walking over. "Eldest Miss, Han Feng is here." Given Han Feng's constant companionship with Xiao Nani, Jiang Peihuan expressed a measure of surprise upon hearing his arrival. Jiang Shangbai's eyes were filled with surprise. What could have brought him here? Could it be that King Qing sent him here? By then, Han Feng had reached Jiang Peihuan. "Miss Jiang, The master has entrusted me to deliver this letter to you. Han Feng stepped forward, extending a courteous bow to Jiang Peihuan. He then retrieved a letter from within his sleeve, presenting it to her with both hands. Looking at the letter in Han Feng's hand, Jiang Peihuan reached out and took it. Looking at him, Jiang Peihuan asked softly, "Does your master have anything else to say? Master has requested that you peruse the letter first." In response, Jiang Peihuan promptly opened the letter. Despite its brevity, the content caused her complexion to shift abruptly. "Huan what's wrong?" Jian Peihuan didn't say anything, but handed the letter to Jiang Changbai. Then, Jian Peihuan looked at Han Feng. Meeting her gaze, Han Feng continued, "Master said that the great general has already handed over his military power, so it's not appropriate to use the soldiers in the army. If the eldest miss wanted to go and exterminate the bandits, Master would prepare soldiers for the eldest Mississippi. Follow current novels on topnovelfool.com. Chapter 150. Luring the snake out of its hole. The letter from Xiao Nani contained information about the bandits who attempted to murder the old Madame Jiang. These bandits had not only tried to murder old Madame Jiang, but they were also involved in a series of horrendous crimes. Due to their formidable martial arts skills, the local authorities were unable to apprehend them despite numerous attempts. These individuals have no respect for the law whatsoever. Jiang Changbai, seething with rage, remarked as he read through the letter. Xueqi, already aware of the situation, responded coldly upon hearing Jiang Shangbai's words. Such ruthless bandits are not uncommon in Qingzhou. However, it's surprising to find them lurking even under the emperor's feet in Jingdou. Jiang Peihuan remained silent but turned to Han Feng and said, "Go back and inform your master that I will be there tonight. Please ask him to prepare the men for me. Eldest miss, to be honest, master has already prepared the men for you." Hearing this, Jian Peihuan's eyes revealed some surprise. An hour later, Jiang Peihuan saw Lin Xingqian and the others in the suburbs outside the city. Seeing Jiang Peihuan, Lin Xingqian led his men to dismount and bowed to her. "Greetings, eldest Mississippi. Lin Xingqian, are you the one sent by Xiao Nani?" "Yes." Jiang Peihuan had initially assumed that Xiao Nani would provide her with military support. However, she did not expect him to send Lin Xingqian directly. Lin Xingqian. Hearing this name, a flicker of confusion crossed Jiang Shangbai's eyes before he questioned Lin Xingqian. "Are you a member of the Lin family?" "Yes, indeed. I belong to the main branch of the Lin family." "So, you are Lin Shuai's legitimate son, the young marshal of the Lin family." Xueqi made this statement. Hearing him, a flicker of surprise crossed Lin Xingqian's face, followed by a smile. "I didn't expect anyone in this world would still remember my father." There was a tinge of sadness in Lin Xingqian's smile. Recalling Lin Xingqian's accomplishments from his past life, Jiang Peihuan murmured, "With your efforts, it isn't an impossible task to resurrect your father's name." Jiang Peihuan's words visibly shocked Lin Xingqian. However, he quickly regained his composure. Addressing Jiang Peihuan, Lin Xingqian said, "Eldest miss, since you intend to eradicate the bandits tonight, we should set off immediately. It's essential to familiarize ourselves with the enemy's terrain in advance." "Very well." Upon Jiang Peihuan's agreement, Lin Xingqian and his men mounted their horses. Witnessing this, Jiang Changbai asked his sister, "Huan should we inform our parents about this? Let's talk about it later." Jiang Changbai wanted to say something else, but Xueqi interjected, "Changbai, if aunt and uncle knew about this, they might stop us from going. I don't want to miss such a golden opportunity." Saying this, Xueqi spurred his horse forward. Seeing this, Jiang Changbai held his tongue and followed the crowd. Soon Jiang Peihuan and the others arrived before a mountain. As they looked up from the foot of the mountain, they could spot some dwellings at its summit. This observation alone convinced Jiang Peihuan that they weren't dealing with ordinary bandits. While most bandits nested within the mountain, it was unusual for them to settle on its peak. First, it would cost a lot of financial and material resources, and there's a risk of getting trapped. However, there is an upside. The position is easily defensible and typically hard to attack. Jiang Peihuan, Jiang Changbai, Xueqi, and Lin Xingchen all stared at the mountaintop, each engrossed in their thoughts. For a long time, no one spoke. Jiang Peihuan turned to the other three and asked, "Do any of you have a plan?" "The best way is to attack with fire, but this would potentially cause a large-scale fire, which would harm the surrounding people," Lin Xingchen said. Jiang Peihuan remained silent before her gaze moved to Jiang Changbai and Xueqi. Meeting Jiang Peihuan's gaze, Xueqi spoke first. "If it were me, I would choose to infiltrate their camp and gather information, and then devise a longer-term plan." "Elder brother, what about you?" "My thoughts are the same as Aqi's. We don't know the terrain or how many people there are, so it's not wise to attack rashly." Hearing their answers, Jian Peihuan nodded but did not say anything. Seeing this, Lin Xingchen immediately asked, "Eldest miss, do you have any good ideas?" "I'm afraid it's very difficult to take the initiative to gather information. These people have placed their base on the mountain peak, which means that they are very cautious. As for fire attacks, this method would not work here. I do have an idea, but I need your cooperation." "What is it?" "Lure the snake out of its hole, and let them take the initiative to bring us up the mountain." "How is this possible?" "The conventional method definitely won't work. But what if we bribe them?" Facing the three people's puzzled expressions, Jiang Peihuan briefly explained her thoughts, and then continued. "Cousin Qi and I pretended to be visiting relatives from other places. Elder brother General Lin, go to them, and tell them that we brought a lot of gold and silver. Money sways the heart. I believe they will willingly guide us in." The three of them had no objections to Jiang Peihuan's plans. When the sky had just turned dark, Lin Xingchen and Jiang Changbai took the initiative to go to the mountain peak. Halfway up the mountain, the two of them were intercepted. Jiang Changbai took out a bag of silver and successfully reached the top of the mountain. On the road not far from the foot of the mountain, Xueqi and Jiang Peihuan on the road not far from the foot of the mountain, Xueqi and Jiang Peihuan were sitting in the carriage playing chess. Jiang Peihuan had just placed her chess piece when she heard the sound of horse hooves. That was fast. Jiang Peihuan and Xueqi looked at each other, and both of them saw the surprise in each other's eyes. Jiang Peihuan lifted the curtain and saw Xiaonani on Jue Yun's back. When Jiang Peihuan saw Xiaonani, the man also saw her. Their eyes met, and the man rode to the carriage. Then he lifted the curtain and entered the carriage. "Why are you here?" Seeing Xiaonani at her side, Jiang Peihuan blurted out without thinking. "I was worried about you, so I came to take a look." "King Cheng, you are underestimating me. I can protect Huan Air on my own." Xueqi, who was sitting across from them, couldn't help but look at the man angrily when he heard what Xiaonani said. However, Xiaonani responded firmly, "My queen is better protected by me." Xueqi fell silent. He regretted it. If he had known earlier, he would have gone up the mountain with them. "Master, they've arrived." At that moment, Han Feng's voice came from outside the carriage. Then, Jiang Peihuan heard the sound of horse hooves. "Those two brats didn't lie to us. There really is a juicy target." With the sound of horse hooves, a rough voice echoed in Jiang Peihuan's ears. Subsequently, the curtain of the carriage was abruptly lifted. Jiang Peihuan saw a group of masked men. In the dim light, the men outside couldn't discern the faces of the people in the carriage, but judging by the attire of Jiang Peihuan and Xiaonani, they were sure that they were wealthy. The man who had spoken earlier shouted, "Everyone get down here." Follow current novels on topnovelfool.com. Chapter 151. Recognizing Lin Xingchen. Hearing these words, Jiang Peihuan distinctly felt the temperature around Xiaonani drop instantly. Worried that the man might lose control and take action right away, Jiang Peihuan quickly grabbed his hand, then lowered her voice and said, "Xiaonani, hold back." To the others, it seemed like Jiang Peihuan was scared. As she spoke, her breath washed over Xiaonani's ear, and he could even distinctly smell her faint fragrance. The three of them didn't say anything, but cooperatively dismounted from the carriage. As Jiang Peihuan had anticipated, the group led them up the mountain. However, the path they took was different from the one Jiang Peihuan had seen earlier. It was a much more concealed route. Jiang Peihuan quietly memorized the path and followed along. Xiao Nani walked in front of Jiang Peihuan, and Xueqi followed behind her. By the time they reached halfway up the mountain, the bandits couldn't ride their horses anymore and had to proceed on foot. Perhaps because Jiang Peihuan and her companions were cooperative, the group didn't give them a hard time. After walking for 2 hours, they were led to an empty field. As soon as they arrived, Jiang Peihuan saw Jiang Changbai and Lin Xingchen, who were tied to chairs. Both of them had clearly been beaten up, with wounds visible on their faces. Seeing Jiang Peihuan approach, their eyes filled with resentment. However, when they saw Xiao Nani, the resentment in their eyes turned into surprise. What do you mean? One gave you money to kidnap them. Why did you? Before Jiang Changbai could finish, he was punched. The man standing next to him, witnessing his pain, scoffed. Do you think we're fools? These people are obviously rich. And you two are obviously wealthy too, since all of you are wealthy here. We wouldn't let any of you go. Hearing this, Jiang Changbai was speechless, left without any rebuttal. Seeing this, Xueqi spoke up. What do you want with us? If it's money you're after, we can give it to you. Just let us go. Of course we want money, but we want people too. As he spoke, a tall man suddenly walked towards Xiao Nani. When everyone witnessed this scene, they were all stunned, Jiang Peihuan included, whose eyes widened in surprise. Boss, this young man is fair and delicate. Doesn't he meet your requirements? The man referred to as boss was the one who approached Xiao Nani. He carefully scrutinized Xiao Nani's appearance, finding it face somewhat familiar, but he couldn't recall it at the moment. From Xiao Nani's face down, the leader of the bandits carefully sized up Xiao Nani's figure. Eventually, a lewd smile appeared in his eyes. Good one like this one. As he spoke, he reached out intending to touch Xiao Nani's face. Xiao Nani's expression changed instantly, his eyes filled with fury. Xueqi quietly moved aside. If you dare touch me, I swear I'll cut you into pieces. Xiao Nani dodged the man's hand and spoke with hostility in his eyes. Seeing Xiao Nani's expression, the man shuddered involuntarily. However, when he looked up again, Xiao Nani's expression had returned to normal. A man standing nearby saw this and became angry. Hey brat, do you think you're the king here? 111 teach you a lesson. As he said this, he moved to slap Xiao Nani, but his hand was caught by the boss. This one's mine. Don't you dare lay a hand on him. What if you damage him? Xueqi, Jiang Changbai, and Lin Xingchen all showed a trace of amusement upon witnessing this scene. Worried that Xiao Nani might see their smiles, they all lowered their heads, but their shoulders shook with suppressed laughter. Jiang Peihuan also suppressed a smile, but when she saw Xiao Nani's livid face, she quickly composed herself. All right, lock them in the woodshed for now. We'll sort out their belongings in the morning. Yes. Moments later, they were all taken to a woodshed. It was said to be a woodshed, but it was actually an abandoned house. When the door was pushed open, Jiang Peihuan was stunned. There were many people in the room. Men, women, even children. But these people all shared a common feature. Their eyes filled with fear and numbness. When they saw Jiang Peihuan and the others being brought in, those people only looked up and did not say a word. They only looked at them with sympathy. Why are there so many people here? Seeing these people, Xueqi couldn't help but speak up. Hearing his words, Jiang Changbai said in a low voice. Obviously, these people must have been locked up here by them. That's not helpful. Are you all from the Jingdao? Ignoring the conversation by her side, Jiang Peihuan asked a girl sitting across from them. Compared to the others, this girl's eyes still held some hope. Perhaps it was because Jiang Peihuan spoke gently, or maybe out of sympathy. Upon hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, the girl said softly, I'm the young miss of the Lin family. I was kidnapped while I was out playing. The Lin family? Who is your father? As she spoke, Jiang Peihuan subconsciously glanced at Lin Xingchen. The little girl was quite young, looking about 10 years old. Flaring Jiang Peihuan's words, she whispered, My father is Lin Rupiang. I'm his youngest daughter. My name is Lin Minglan. Jiang Peihuan had no impression of the name Lin Rupiang. She subconsciously looked at Xiao Nani. Meeting Jiang Peihuan's eyes, the man said softly, The editor of the Hanlin Academy has no sense of existence in the Lin family. Hearing this, Jiang Peihuan understood. It seemed he Lin Ruhai younger brother from another mother. At this moment, Jiang Peihuan noticed Lin Minglan was staring in Lin Xingchen's direction. Just as she was about to speak, she heard the little girls shout, "Brother Xingchen, it's you." Upon hearing the little girl's voice, Jiang Peihuan and the others all turned to look at Lin Xingchen. But upon hearing the little girl's call, Lin Xingchen with a cold face said, "You're mistaken." "I'm not mistaken." The little girl suddenly stood up and walked in front of Lin Xingchen. She opened her collar, taking a small pendant from around her neck. It was just a small marble, not worth any money, but because it was always worn close to her body, the marble was very smooth. Holding the marble from her necklace up in front of Lin Xingchen, Lin Minglan said with excitement in her eyes, "Brother Xingchen, have you forgotten Lan Lan? This is the marble you gave me before one been kidnapped. Look, I've been wearing it all along." Follow current novels on topnovelfool.com. Chapter 152. Lin Minglan of the Lin family. Upon seeing the marble on the little girl's neck, a hint of excitement flashed in Lin Xingchen's eyes. However, when he faced Lin Minglan, he pushed her away. "What marble? One have no idea what this is, you've got the wrong person." Even though Lin Xingchen's expression was very cold, Jiang Peihuan caught the flicker of excitement in his eyes. Glancing at the marble on Lin Minglan's neck, Jiang Peihuan recognized it as a toy beloved by children. From this, Jiang Peihuan guessed that Lin Minglan and Lin Xingchen must have had a good relationship when they were young. But Lin Minglan didn't know Lin Xingchen's thoughts. Hearing his emotionless words, the little girl's eyes were filled with sadness. Just as she was about to say something, the door was suddenly pushed open. All the people who had been captured earlier shrank back in fear. Two men walked in, one with a cold aura all over him, the other with a lecherous look. The man in the front swept his gaze over everyone, mainly focusing on the young girls. His eyes finally landed on Lin Minglan. Seeing her delicate face, a smile appeared in his eyes. "Big brother, this girl isn't bad. Why don't we take her tonight?" Upon hearing this, the man behind gave Lin Minglan a brief glance, and then nodded. "All right, take her away." Upon hearing the man's words, the man who spoke earlier directly stepped forward and grabbed Lin Minglan's arm. Seeing these two men suddenly appear, Lin Minglan's eyes were full of terror, and she instinctively began to struggle. "Let go of me." Lin Minglan was just a little girl, and the two men were much bigger than her. No matter how much she struggled, she couldn't break free from the man's grasp. Those who had been brought in before seemed numb to the situation. Not only did they not step forward, they actually seemed relieved. Seeing this, Jiang Peihuan frowned. In her panic, Lin Minglan bit the man's hand hard. The man yelped in pain and cursed, "You little brat, how dare you bite me? I'll kill you today." As he spoke, he slapped Lin Minglan's face. Blood immediately seeped from the corner of the little girl's mouth. Seeing this scene, Jian Peihuan subconsciously wanted to make a move, but someone beat her to it. As the man raised his hand again, Lin Xingchen stepped forward, kicked the man down, and then scooped Lin Minglan into his arms. The little girl had just been slapped, and her eyes were filled with terror. But now, held in Lin Xingchen's arms, she no longer looked afraid. Instead, a small smile appeared on her face as she looked at the young man beside her. The little girl showed a bright smile. "Brother Xingchen." Although Lin Xingchen didn't comfort her verbally, he didn't continue with his cold expression either. He placed her next to Jiang Peihuan and spoke softly. "Eldest miss, could you please help me take care of her?" Seeing Jiang Peihuan nod, Lin Xingchen turned to look at the two men. The man Lin Xingchen had knocked down had already gotten up, but he looked at Lin Xingchen with a grim expression. "Who are you to meddle in our affairs? I'm here to claim your lives." As his words fell, Lin Xingchen had already drawn his long sword. However, he did not expect the man's martial arts skills to be quite good. The previously quiet bandit, seeing the situation, quickly ran out, apparently to call for reinforcements. Seeing this, Jiang Peihuan quickly turned to Jiang Changbai. "Elder brother, stop him." Hearing Jiang Peihuan's voice, Jiang Changbai immediately stepped forward. The small room suddenly filled with the sound of fighting. Jiang Peihuan took Lin Minglan and moved back a bit. At this point, Lin Xingchen had already pierced the heart of the man who initiated the fight with his sword. Seeing the man on the ground and another man halted by Jiang Changbai, the latter's face hinted at unease. His eyes, filled with hostility, glared at the people in front of him. Coldly he demanded, "Who are you? How dare you kill in my place?" Without a word, Jiang Changbai and Lin Xingchen glanced at each other and killed that man. Seeing the two bodies on the ground, the people who had been captured earlier looked relieved and surprised. Then they all knelt before Jiang Peihuan and the others, begging, "Save us, please save us. You guys please get up first." Jiang Peihuan said, worrying that the noise here would attract others. However, the people paid no heed and continued their desperate pleas. Seeing this, Jiang Peihuan coldly intervened. "If they discover what happened here, none of us will escape. If you want to leave this place, listen to me." Seeing the coldness in Jiang Peihuan's eyes, the people finally shut their mouths and slowly sat down on the ground. But still, someone couldn't help but ask, "Miss, one know you are not ordinary people, can you save us?" "We will do our best." Jiang Peihuan wasn't sure what would happen next. She could only promise to try her best, but she couldn't guarantee anything. Some people were obviously dissatisfied with her response, but considering the two bodies on the ground, nobody dared to say anything. At this moment, Lin Xingchen came up to Jiang Peihuan, full of regret, and said softly, "I'm sorry, eldest miss, I've messed up your plan." Seeing the remorse in Lin Xingchen's eyes, Jiang Peihuan shook her head. Just as she was about to speak, a soft voice echoed from her side. "Sister, don't blame Brother Xingchen. He was only trying to save me." Lin Minglan's face was already swollen, but the little girl was still speaking softly on Lin Xingchen's behalf. Jiang Peihuan didn't particularly like the people of the Lin family, but she had no ill will towards the little girl in front of her. She looked at Lin Xingchen and said softly, "It's all right. Saving people is more important." If Lin Xingchen could have watched Lin Minglan being taken away by those two men without doing anything, Jiang Peihuan would have been terrified. Now, at least it showed that Lin Xingchen still had principles. "Elder brother, strip off the clothes of those two men." "Huan heir, what do you need these men's clothes for?" Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Jiang Changbai asked instinctively, but his hands were already working on it. Jiang Peihuan didn't answer Jiang Shangbai's question. Instead, she took out a small medicine bottle from her bag and said softly to Lin Minglan, "You're hurt. Let me apply the medicine for you." "Thank you, sister." Seeing the medicine bottle in Jiang Peihuan's hand, the little girl thanked her softly. But then, she looked at Lin Xingchen. "But I want Brother Xingchen to apply the medicine for me." Hearing this, Jiang Peihuan raised her eyebrows and, without waiting for Lin Xingchen to respond, she threw the medicine bottle to him. He caught it instinctively. Follow current novels on topnovelfool.com. Chapter 153. Gathering information. Witnessing this scene, Jiang Peihuan's eyes revealed a smile, and so did Lin Minglan's. Before Lin Xingchen could say anything, she ran up to him and said with a smile, "Brother Xingchen, can you help me apply the medicine?" The little girl smiled and pulled her wound, causing her to grimace in pain. Lin Xingchen had originally wanted to remain stern, but seeing the wound on the young girl's face, he opened the medicine bottle and poured out a bit of ointment on his fingertip. Gently he applied it to the corner of the girl's mouth. Although the wound at the corner of her mouth still hurt, Lin Minglan's eyes were filled of smiles. Seeing the smile on her face, Lin Xingchen could no longer keep a cold face. He lowered his head to look at her and said in a low voice, "I'll think of a way to send you home, but you can't tell anyone that you saw me, understand? Brother Xingchen, aren't you coming home?" Hearing his words, she reflexively asked. But upon hearing the girl's words, the warmth in Lin Xingchen's eyes disappeared in an instant, replaced by sternness. He looked at Lin Minglan coldly and said softly, "That place is no longer my home." After saying this, Lin Xingchen walked away without looking at Lin Minglan again. The little girl still wanted to say something, but Jiang Peihuan held her hand. "Little girl, you are a smart child. You should know what to say and what not to say." Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Lin Minglan looked at Lin Xingchen and finally nodded. "Brother Xingchen, Don't worry, one won't tell anyone I've seen you. But will I be able to see you again after I return home? As she said the last sentence, her eyes were filled with tears. Seeing the look in her eyes, Lin Xingchen nodded. We will meet again in the future. He would have to return sooner or later, once he reclaimed what was rightfully his. Upon hearing these words, Lin Menglen's eyes filled with smiles again. Huan the clothes have been removed. At this point, Jiang Changbai had already stripped the two men of their clothes and dragged their bodies into the corner. Taking the clothes from Jiang Shangbai's hands, Jiang Peihuan said softly, "One want to go out and gather some information, and check out the terrain here." As she spoke, Jiang Peihuan began to put on one of the clothes. Seeing this, Jiang Changbai said directly, "Then I'll go with you." As he spoke, he began to put on another set of clothes. Although these were clothes that had just been taken off from a dead person, whether it was Jiang Changbai or Jiang Peihuan, they were both people who had been to the battlefield, so they did not care about these at all. Just as Jiang Changbai was about to put on the clothes, they were snatched away. He looked up to see Xiao Nani putting on the clothes. The corners of Jiang Shangbai's mouth twitched. He couldn't help but look at Xiao Nani and say, "Your Highness, isn't this inappropriate? With many people here, in case of any emergencies, you should stay here to protect them. As for Peihuan, one will protect her." Anticipating what Jiang Changbai wanted to say, Xiao Nani spoke first. At this time, Jiang Peihuan had already put on the clothes. She tied up her long hair. In the night, no one could easily recognize her identity. Xiao Nani stood by her side. They exchanged a glance and left the woodshed together. Watching them leave, Jiang Changbai was filled with frustration. If it were anyone else, he could have beat them up, but he couldn't lay a hand on Xiao Nani because of his status. Plus, even if he tried, he might not win. Watching this, Xueqi burst out laughing. Hearing his laughter, Jiang Changbai looked at him angrily. "You're laughing? You didn't even try to stop him just now. You speak as if you can stop His Highness King Cheng." Upon hearing this, Jiang Changbai fell silent. "Xiao Nani, let's go that way." After coming out of the woodshed, Jiang Peihuan pointed to the left. Since there were bright lights over there, she guessed that was the bandits' base camp. Xiao Nani didn't say anything. Instead, he took her hand and pulled her behind him, to protect her in case of any sudden incident. "You stay behind me." Hearing the man's words, Jiang Peihuan nodded slightly, her eyes showing a touch of warmth. The two of them quietly approached the light source. When they reached the wall, Jiang Peihuan was about to climb up when she felt a force at her waist. Xiao Nani held her by the waist, and with a single leap, they were on the rooftop. After sitting down on the roof, Xiao Nani removed a roof tile. Through the lamplight, Jiang Peihuan could see the situation inside the house. There were 3 people in the room, and the floor was filled with jewels and jewelry. Some of the things were prepared by Jiang Peihuan's people, and the rest were naturally stolen by these people. Boss were rich this time. The man addressed as boss was the one who had come down the mountain earlier. Seated on a chair, a hint of a smile appeared in his eyes upon hearing these words. "With this money, we can live comfortably for quite a while. Right, boss? When is Prince Qing's mansion settling the bill?" Upon hearing the words Prince Qing's mansion, Jiang Peihuan pricked up her ears. At the mention of this, the smile in the boss' eyes vanished without a trace, replaced by an unpleasant look. "Don't mention it, our third brother hasn't returned yet. We might not get paid this time. Boss, we have lost so many brothers. Do you think the Qing mansion will dare to go back on their word? Are you stupid? That's Prince Qing, the son of the emperor. As civilians, we can't go against the officials. Besides, don't you know who we are?" Upon hearing this, the man fell silent. While Jiang Peihuan was pondering the meaning of their conversation, she suddenly heard a soft noise. Turning her head, she saw a snow-white rat standing before her. Seeing Jiang Peihuan on the roof, the rat widened its eyes and charged towards her. Seeing this, Xiao Nani, who was nearby, quickly embraced Jiang Peihuan. "Xiao Nani, be careful, don't let it bite you. This was a brocade rat, extremely poisonous," Jiang Peihuan quickly warned. Hearing her, Xiao Nani immediately drew his long sword. The brocade rat was impaled by Xiao Nani's sword. Looking at the dead brocade rat, Jiang Peihuan felt a touch of pity. The blood of the brocade rat was a precious ingredient for medicine. Who's there? A voice came from below. Then, all three men in the house jumped onto the rooftop. Seeing the brocade rat on the roof, the man called boss had pure anguish in his eyes. How dare you kill my brocade rat? I'll kill you and bury you with it. Follow current novels on Top Novel.com. Chapter 154. Late night fight. As he spoke, the man pulled out his sword, aiming directly at Jiang Peihuan. Because Jiang Peihuan did not have a weapon in her hand. Xiao Nani, witnessing this scene, had a cold look in his eyes. You're courting death. With a swift backhand sword grip, Xiao Nani's eyes were filled with killing intent. Jiang Peihuan knew that this situation was turning bad, so she pulled out the long whip from her waist. However, Xiao Nani was up against three alone, leaving no room for Jiang Peihuan to step in. So she simply stood by and watched the fight. The sounds of fighting on the roof alarmed everyone in the Shan Mountain village. When she saw the bandits running out, Jiang Peihuan flew down and lashed out with the long whip in her hand. In an instant the approaching crowd fell. Xiao Nani, seeing that Jiang Peihuan could handle herself, didn't come down from the roof. Huan you're not fair. You started a fight without calling me. At this moment, Jiang Peihuan saw Xueqi coming towards her, with Lin Xingchen beside him. However, Jiang Changbai was nowhere to be found. Not seeing her elder brother, Jiang Peihuan couldn't help but ask Xueqi, Cousin Qi, where is my elder brother? I asked him to stay there and protect those people. Both Xueqi and Lin Xingchen were rare expert. With their help, Jiang Peihuan felt she was hardly needed. Looking at Xiao Nani on the roof, she turned to the two and said, I'm going to help Xiao Nani. 111 leave here to you. With that, Jiang Peihuan flew away. When she reached the roof, she saw the gang leader running towards the back mountain. Seeing this, she immediately pursued. Huan be careful. People behind her shouted when they saw Jiang Peihuan's actions. Jiang Peihuan didn't respond, but pursued the man in front of her with all her strength. Her lightness skills were not weak, as she had been taught by Jiang Hong himself. However, the man's lightness skill was faster than hers. By the time she reached the back mountain, Jiang Peihuan suddenly realized the man had disappeared. Looking at the quiet back mountain, Jiang Peihuan frowned, but she gripped her long whip tightly, not daring to relax for a moment. There was a slight sound in her ear. Without thinking, she flipped her wrist, and the long whip in Jiang Peihuan's hand lashed out. Ah! With a scream, the man fell to the ground. He touched his face and felt the moisture in his palm. His eyes were filled with fury. I'm going to kill you. As he spoke, he charged at Jiang Peihuan. Jiang Peihuan didn't say a word, focusing on her opponent. The man was a skilled fighter, but Jiang Peihuan's skills were honed on the battlefield, so she was more than capable of handling him. But in the midst of the fight, the man suddenly threw a poisonous scorpion. If Jiang Peihuan had not reacted quickly, the poisonous scorpion would have landed directly on her face. But in her moment of distraction, the man's sword was thrust directly towards Jiang Peihuan's heart. Just as Jiang Peihuan was about to dodge, the man's sword suddenly stopped. Looking up, Jiang Peihuan saw that a sword had pierced the man's shoulder. Then, with a flick of Xiao Nani's sword, the man's wrist was cut off. In an instant, the entire back mountain echoed with screams. When Xiao Nani was about to pick up his long sword again, Jiang Peihuan quickly said, Xiao Nani, don't kill him yet. Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Xiao Nani changed the direction of his sword, but still managed to stab the man in the arm. The man, seriously wounded, did not make a sound after his initial screams of agony. Jiang Peihuan walked up to the man and said coldly, I'll ask you a few questions. You'd better answer honestly. Huh? Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, the man sneered. His eyes were full of mockery. Xiao Nani, who was at the side, saw this and flicked his sword, and one of the man's fingers was instantly severed. The man grunted, but he did not dare to speak again. There was a hint of fear in his eyes. Xiao Nani glanced at him and spoke directly. You better start talking, or I won't mind cutting off your fingers one by one. You're the King Cheng? Hearing Xiao Nani being addressed this way, the man spoke, his eyes filled with terror. But Xiao Nani didn't respond to him. Jiang Peihuan looked down at the man on the ground and said coldly, "Tell me, who ordered you to kidnap the old Madame Jing of the general's mansion? What were you planning to do with her?" Hearing Jiang Peihuan's voice, the man widened his eyes. Then after a few seconds of silence, he spoke in a low voice. "I can't tell, Before he could finish his sentence, a surge of pain came from his hand, as Xiao Nani had cut off another of his fingers. Looking at the man lying on the ground, Xiao Nani's eyes were full of gloom. "My patience is limited." It was Prince Qing. Jiang Peihuan already knew about it. Upon hearing the man's words, she continued, "What did Prince Qing tell you to do next?" Glancing at Jiang Peihuan's face, the man said in a low voice, "Kill her." As soon as the man's words fell, Jiang Peihuan's long whip wrapped around his neck. With a slight jerk of her wrist, the man's breath was cut off. After killing him, Jiang Peihuan realized that Xiao Nani was standing next to her. She subconsciously looked up at him, but saw that his expression was calm. At this, Jiang Peihuan sighed in relief. Meeting Jiang Peihuan's eyes, Xiao Nani spoke softly, "Huan next time if there's a need to kill, you don't have to do it yourself. Just tell me, and 111 do it for you." Huan Just as Jiang Peihuan was about to speak, she saw Xueqi and Lin Xingchen coming towards them, along with Jiang Changbei. Seeing the man on the ground, Jiang Shangbai's eyes were filled with coldness. So it was these people who wanted to kidnap grandmother. They were acting on the orders of Prince Qing. Prince Qing. Upon hearing Jiang Shangbai's words, Jiang Peihuan nodded, and then repeated what the bandits had said. After learning about Xiao Junhao's plan from Jiang Peihuan, Jiang Shangbai's eyes filled with anger. Our general's mansion has no grudge with Prince Qing. Why would he do this? This is not the first time. These words were spoken by Lin Xingchen, who recounted his initial ambush of Jiang Peihuan on the road, while meeting Jiang Shangbai's gaze. Upon hearing this, Jiang Shangbai's already grim expression darkened even further. Looking at the corpse on the ground, Jiang Changbei immediately said, "Huan we have to tell father and mother about this. We will then appeal to the emperor for a judgment. Brother, do you believe that the emperor would indeed punish Prince Qing on our behalf?" Upon hearing this, a look of conflict appeared in Jiang Shangbai's eyes. Before he could say anything, Jiang Peihuan continued, "In any case, Prince Qing is still a prince. Besides, neither grandmother nor one have suffered any substantial harm. So even if this matter reaches the emperor, he won't really do anything to Prince Qing." Follow current novels on topnovelfool.com. Chapter 155. Eliminating the bandits. As long as Prince Qing staunchly denies it, this matter will eventually come to nothing. So, are we just going to let this matter rest? Of course we can't let it rest. Hearing Jiang Shangbai's words, Jiang Peihuan chuckled softly, and then said with a smile. While she spoke, although she had a smile on her face, there was no trace of a smile in her eyes. There was only a scheming and gloomy look in them. Everyone observing this scene suddenly felt a touch of sympathy for Xiao Junhao. Turning to the man beside her, Jiang Peihuan spoke softly. "If my guess is correct, the palace should be almost done being refurbished, right?" Xiao Nani was not surprised by Jiang Peihuan's conclusion. Hearing her words, he nodded in agreement. Xiao Junhao has already prepared the funds, so the completion is only a matter of time. In no more than 3 to 5 days, the palace should be completely refurbished. Hearing this, Jiang Peihuan nodded, then continued, "I suspect that with Xiao Junhao's character, after the palace refurbishment is completed, he will definitely invite the emperor to see his accomplishments." Seeing Xiao Nani nod, and then observing the puzzled expressions on Jiang Changbei and the others, Jiang Peihuan continued with a smile. "What if the refurbished palace collapses in front of the emperor? What do you think will happen?" Hearing this, everyone's faces revealed surprise. Xueqi was the first to speak. "Even if Prince Qing is a royal prince, the emperor will probably blame him, won't he?" Huan one suppose what you want is not merely for Xiao Junhao to be punished. As everyone was discussing, Xiaonani suddenly looked at Jiang Peihuan and spoke. Meeting the man's gaze, Jiang Peihuan laughed and said, "One heard that you have a good relationship with the Imperial Astronomical Bureau." Upon hearing this, Han Feng, who was hurriedly catching up, couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. Who in the entire Qi Kingdom doesn't know that his master detests the so-called theory of fate the most? Those in the Imperial Astronomical Bureau, who have been ridiculed by King Cheng, despise seeing Xiaonani and would rather take a detour. However, upon hearing this, Xiaonani nodded and said with a smile, "Yes, I have a good relationship with the Imperial Astronomical Bureau." Jiang Peihuan had naturally heard about the relationship between Xiaonani and the Imperial Astronomical Bureau, which is why she deliberately mentioned it. Now, seeing the man seriously nodding his head, she was left stunned. While Jiang Peihuan was stunned, Xiaonani continued, "Do you want the palace collapse incident to be associated with Xiao Juanhao? Not only to be associated with him, but one also want his fate to conflict with the emperor's. Since ancient times, emperors have placed great belief in the theory of fate. If the emperor knew that Xiao Junhao's fate conflicted with his own, he would harbor reservations, even if Xiao Juanhao was his biological son." "Okay, I will arrange this matter." Looking at Jiang Peihuan, Xiaonani spoke softly. It was already late at night. Han Feng looked at Xiaonani and asked, "Master, what are we going to do with the bandits on this mountain? Kill them?" As soon as Han Feng's words fell, Xiaonani spoke directly. When Xueqi and Jiang Changbai heard this, they couldn't help but say, "Your Highness King Cheng, these bandits are good at martial arts. If we recruit them into the army, then would recruiting them into the army do justice to those they killed?" Before the two could finish speaking, Xiaonani interrupted them. Hearing this, both of them were stunned and eventually shut their mouths. Lin Xingqian, who was standing nearby, was even more surprised by this scene. He suddenly felt extremely fortunate. He was glad that he hadn't actually done anything to Jiang Peihuan back then, or else he might not be standing here today. It was as if Jiang Peihuan had guessed Lin Xingqian's thoughts. She turned to him and said, "General Lin, don't worry. You're different. Although you and your servants were once bandits, you have a moral code. You've never truly done anything to harm people." An hour later, Jiang Peihuan and Xiaonani went down the mountain together. The people who had been kidnapped to the mountain had already been sent away by the soldiers. The official statement was that King Cheng had led the soldiers to wipe out the bandits. This matter had nothing to do with Jiang Peihuan. When they returned to the general's mansion, it was already late at night, and Xiaonani didn't say much. Looking at Jian Peihuan on Lai Feng's back, he said softly, "It's getting late. You should go back and rest. I will arrange that matter as soon as possible." Jiang Peihuan nodded, then followed Jiang Changbai into the general's mansion. As it was already late at night, Jiang Peihuan didn't wish to disturb anyone and headed directly back to the plum garden. The next morning, Jiang Peihuan got up early. She hadn't seen Jiang Hong and Shui Yin since she returned 2 days ago. Worried that she would not be able to see the two of them if she woke up late, Jiang Peihuan went to Yinlin early. When she arrived, Jiang Hong and Shui Yin were preparing for breakfast. Both of them were wearing their armor. Seeing Jiang Peihuan appear, a loving smile appeared on the couple's faces. "Huan heir, come quickly." Shui Yin even personally set the bowls and chopsticks for Jiang Peihuan. After paying respect to the two, Jiang Peihuan sat down on the chair. Just as Jiang Peihuan was about to speak, she heard her mother's voice. "Huan heir, how is your maternal grandmother's health?" "Mother, rest assured. Grandmother's health has already improved." Jiang Peihuan didn't inform her mother about Wang Fengjia's poisoning. Shui Yin is the youngest daughter of old Madame Shui. She has an extremely close relationship with old Madame Shui. If she were to discover Wang Fengjia's act of poisoning, Jiang Peihuan wasn't sure how her mother would react. Thinking about old Madame Shui's arrangements, Jiang Peihuan chose to hide the matter. "I asked Yi Xiao to give the prescription for grandmother's recuperation to second aunt. I think grandmother's body has already recovered." "That's good." Knowing that old Madame Shui's was fine, Shui Yin finally breathed a sigh of relief. Jiang Hong and Shui Yin were husband and wife, so he naturally knew his wife's worries over the past few days. Hearing the conversation between the mother and daughter, he whispered, "Yin heir, now you can be relieved." Shui Yin nodded. "By the way, Huan heir, I heard that you and your older brother went to the outskirts last night." "Yes, father. I was about to discuss this matter with you." Putting down the utensils in her hands, Jiang Peihuan told Jiang Hong about everything that happened last night, including Xiao Junhao's scheming and plots. Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, both Jiang Hong and Shui Yan's eyes were filled with anger. Especially Jiang Hong, his chopsticks snapped in his hand. As a prince, he is so ruthless. "Father, speaking of it, grandmother was also implicated by me." Seeing the guilt in Jiang Peihuan's eyes, Jiang Hong quickly spoke up. "Don't say that. What does this matter have to do with you?" "Father, even though Prince Qing is a royal prince, I can't swallow this grievance. So I've asked King Cheng for some assistance in this matter." Follow current novels on topnovelfool.com. Chapter 156. Going to King Cheng Mansion, meeting Jiang Hong's gaze. Jiang Peihuan briefly explained the arrangements she had made. Upon hearing these arrangements, Jiang Hong appeared very satisfied. On the other hand, Shui Yan, who had overheard the conversation, couldn't help but express her concern. "Huan heir, based on what you said, Prince Qing is extremely narrow-minded. If he finds out that you are the one orchestrating this, he will not let you off lightly. Mother, even if we do nothing, he will not let us go. Even though father has already handed over the military token, as long as our Jiang family remains in Jingdo, we cannot keep ourselves uninvolved." Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Shui Yan fell silent. After a moment she laughed. "I really have grown old. Now one can't see things as clearly as you, a young girl in her teens." "Madam, Deputy General Liu has returned." At this moment, Yan Lin's maid walked in with a smile. Hearing this, a smile also appeared in Jiang Peihuan's eyes. "Mother, if you're not busy today, why not check out the things that grandmother prepared for you? And cousin Qi, he hasn't seen you yet. Yin heir, you don't need to go to the military camp today." Before Shui Yan could respond, Jiang Hong had already spoken. Hearing this, Shui Yan nodded. Then Jiang Peihuan and her parents went to the main hall. At this time, Xueqi also arrived in the main hall. Seeing Jiang Hong and Shui Yan, he hurried forward to greet them. "Nephew greets aunt and uncle." Seeing the young man bowing to her, Shui Yan's eyes instantly turned red. Stepping forward, she helped Xueqi up and carefully studied his features. "When I left Qingzhou, you were still held in your father's arms. In the blink of an eye, Qi, you've grown so much. No matter how old one gets in my eyes, aunt is always beautiful. You're just as sweet-talking as you were when you were a child." Shui Yan's sadness was washed away by Xueqi's words. "Mother, quickly go and take a look at the things that grandmother has prepared for you. There are many things that you like to eat." "All right, I'll go take a look." Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Shui Yan walked out of the main hall. All the boxes had been carried in, filling up the large yard. Most of them were food, but they were all food that Shui Yan liked to eat. Shui Yan's eyes were filled with tears when she saw these things. "Huan heir, send over the things your grandmother prepared for your two aunts." "Yes, mother." "By the way," seeing Jiang Peihuan's puzzled expression, Shui Yan continued, "These food from Qingzhou has a unique flavor. Prepare some and send it to King Cheng's mansion." Hearing Shui Yan's words, a hint of doubt flashed through Jiang Peihuan's eyes, but she still nodded. 2 hours later, Jiang Peihuan, Yi Xiao, and Yu Er boarded a carriage. King Cheng Mansion was located in the center of Jingdo, occupying a few hundred acres of land. King Cheng Mansion. Xiao Nani was practicing his sword skills. Upon seeing Han Feng rushing towards him, the long sword in his hand pointed directly at Han Feng's heart. Startled, Han Feng quickly shouted, "Master, the eldest miss is here." "What did you say?" The man's long sword flicked, aiming straight at a fallen leaf. He then threw the sword, which embedded itself into a tree trunk. Just as Han Feng was about to speak again, the man's figure had already darted towards the mansion entrance. This was Jiang Peihuan's first visit to the King Cheng's mansion. She had never been here in her past life, and in this life, It was also her first time. Surveying the mansion, Jiang Paihuan's eyes revealed a hint of surprise. Other mansions were extravagant, but Xiao Nanyes was not only luxurious, but also carried an imposing aura. At the entrance stood two soldiers. At first glance, one could tell they were battle-hardened, their demeanor stern. Huan air. While she was looking around, she saw a figure dressed in white walk out from the main gate. Xiao Nanyes' forehead was still covered in sweat, wearing his practice outfit. As he stood in front of everyone, Jiang Peihuan stepped forward and bowed. "Greetings, Your Highness King Cheng." Before she could kneel down, he quickly grasped her hand. "You don't need to bow to anyone in my mansion." As he spoke, Xiao Nani already led Jiang Peihuan by the hand into the mansion. Upon entering, the first thing she saw were 2 rows of soldiers. As she was about to inquire, she heard all the soldiers simultaneously shout, "Greetings, Queen." The sound startled her, and she instinctively turned to the man next to her. Seeing him smiling, he softly laughed. "After all, you will be my queen in 2 months. It's not wrong to call you that now." Unnoticed, all the soldiers' eyes fell on Jiang Peihuan. She noticed their curious stares, which bore no offense, so she did not say anything. Having spent time in the military, she felt quite at ease with these soldiers. She thought for a moment and looked at Yu'er. "Give each soldier a share of the food I brought." "Yes, eldest Mississippi." "Huan air, you brought food?" "Yes." Hearing Xiao Nanyes' words, Jiang Peihuan nodded softly, then said, "My maternal grandmother sent over a lot of food from Qingzhou. My mother asked me to bring some to you. You should try it." At this time, the 2 of them had already walked to a pavilion, and Yi Xiao was bringing up some snacks. "Thank my mother-in-law for me." As he spoke, he picked up a piece of snack. He carefully finished all the snacks in his hand before looking at Jiang Peihuan. "This snack tastes good. One really like it." "I'm glad you like it." As she spoke, Jiang Peihuan subconsciously surveyed the environment around her. Ultimately, she could only describe it with 2 words: cold. Indeed, the entire Cheng's mansion was cold. Throughout their walk, she hadn't seen a single maid or nanny. Noticing Jiang Peihuan looking around, Xiao Nani said, "Since you rarely visit, let me show you around." "Okay." Seeing Jiang Peihuan nodding, Xiao Nani directly took her hand. Jiang Peihuan struggled slightly, but failed to break free, so she went along with him. A hint of a smile appeared in his eyes as he led her to the backyard. "Look, this is the horse stable." Following the direction he was pointing, Jiang Peihuan immediately saw a few Fergana horses. There were still people riding horses in the stable, all of whom were soldiers. After walking a bit further, Xiao Nani spoke softly, "This is the archery range." As he spoke, Jiang Peihuan heard a cheer. Someone had just hit the bullseye. Follow current novels on topnovelfool.com. Chapter 157. Jiang Peihuan's exceptional archery skills. Looking in the direction where the arrow hit the target, Jiang Peihuan realized that the person who shot the bullseye was none other than Lin Xingchen. Lin Xingchen was originally from a family of generals, so Jiang Peihuan was not surprised at his archery skills. However, what did surprise her was that the targets were moving, and he still managed to hit the bullseye, which took more than just good archery skills. "Greetings, Your Highness." At this moment, everyone saw Xiao Nani and Jiang Peihuan. Someone called out upon seeing Xiao Nani, "Your Highness, you've arrived at the perfect time. How about you show us your archery skills?" At that moment, a bow and arrow were passed to Xiao Nani. Xiao Nani initially didn't want to participate, but seeing the curiosity in Jiang Peihuan's eyes, he agreed and extended his hand to her. "Huan air, would you like to give it a try?" Jiang Peihuan loved these places, but seeing the soldiers, she turned to Xiao Nani. "Isn't this your training ground? Would it be appropriate for me to participate? You are my future princess, and the future queen of Cheng's mansion. There's nothing inappropriate about it." Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Xiao Nani replied immediately. The man's voice was not low, and everyone at the training ground could hear him. Upon hearing this, a light chatter broke out among the crowd. "Your Royal Highness, we've heard that the general is an exceptional warrior. Being the daughter of a military family, we believe your archery skills are equally impressive. Why don't you give us a demonstration? The men at the training ground were all Xiao Nanya's soldiers, straightforward and honest. Although their tone was somewhat provocative, but Jiang Peihuan knew they meant no harm. Upon seeing this, she nodded, but Jiang Peihuan did not take Xiao Nanya's outstretched hand. Instead, she leapt into the air and landed directly on the stage. Everyone watching this scene showed a hint of surprise in their eyes. Standing next to Xiao Nani, Jiang Peihuan whispered, "I've never shot at moving targets before. Would your highness please demonstrate first?" Hearing this, Xiao Nani didn't say much. Instead, he drew several arrows from the quiver. Jiang Peihuan noticed that he shot 3 arrows at once, each one hitting the bullseye. Excellent! The crowd erupted in cheers. Xiao Nani paid no mind to the others. Instead, he looked at Jiang Peihuan, who was showing approval in her eyes. A slight smile appeared on his face as he handed the bow and arrow to her. "Here, give it a try." Accepting the bow and arrow, Jiang Peihuan first tested the tension of the bow before drawing an arrow from the quiver. With the string fully drawn, an arrow shot from her hand at high speed, splitting Xiao Nanya's previous arrow lodged in the bullseye in two. The crowd went silent at this sight, their expressions shifting from surprise to sheer shock. Except for Xiao Nani, who seemed to expect this outcome. Jiang Peihuan turned around, drew several more arrows from the quiver, and just like Xiao Nani before her, she shot 3 arrows simultaneously. Each arrow hit the bullseye. Incredible! Your Royal Highness, your archery skills are extraordinary. How did you learn to do this? In the army, power and strength were respected above all else. If previously the soldiers were courteous to Jiang Peihuan because of Xiao Nani, now they showed her warmth and respect entirely because of her own demonstrated abilities. Hearing their words, Jiang Peihuan chuckled lightly and said, "There's nothing to fuss about. Practice makes perfect." Jiang Peihuan recalled that when she had barely learned to walk, Jiang Hong was already coaching her in archery. At that time, Jiang Peihuan was not even as tall as the bow. The soldier who heard her words was about to say something, but was interrupted by Xiao Nani. He grabbed Jiang Peihuan's hand and turned to Lin Xingqian. "You continue to train them?" "Yes, your highness." Jiang Peihuan nodded at everyone, and then left with Xiao Nani. Xiao Nani took Jiang Peihuan around the majority of the mansion. They didn't finish the tour as the mansion was simply too big to cover in one day. Throughout the tour, Jiang Peihuan did not see a single woman. Jiang Peihuan initially planned to leave after delivering the snacks, but by the time she actually left the Cheng's mansion, it was already evening. Xiao Nani escorted her to the door. By this time, the butler of the mansion had prepared many gifts to be loaded onto her carriage. Seeing this, Jiang Peihuan looked at Xiao Nani with confused eyes. Noticing her confused expression, Xiao Nani softly said, "The great general's wife specially asked you to deliver food to me, so it's only right that I return the favor." Jiang Peihuan instinctively wanted to refuse, but knowing his character, she simply nodded. "All right. I should get going then. MHM. Seeing him nod, Jiang Peihuan got into the carriage. Xiao Nani stood at the entrance, watching Jiang Peihuan's carriage depart until it disappeared around a corner. Only then did he divert his gaze. At this moment, Han Feng approached Xiao Nani and reported, "Master, the palace has been fully refurbished." In that case, Xiao Juanhao should be inviting the imperial brother to visit within the next few days, right? Under normal circumstances, yes. Both Xiao Nani and Jiang Peihuan assumed Xiao Juanhao would wait at least 2 days before inviting Emperor Qiming to tour the newly refurbished palace. However, the very next day, Jiang Peihuan found herself in a carriage heading to the palace with Jiang Hong and Shui Yan. Apart from old Madame Jiang and those not present in the mansion, almost everyone from the Jiang family had come. At this time, Jiang Peihuan shared the same carriage with Jiang Ruyun. Looking at Jiang Peihuan, Jiang Ruyun whispered, "Big sister, why did the emperor suddenly invite all the ministers and their families to the palace? If I'm not mistaken, it's likely because the palace renovations are complete, and the emperor wants all the ministers to visit together." As it turned out, Jiang Peihuan's assumption was correct. When the carriage stopped at the palace entrance, Jiang Peihuan saw a long line of carriages, with the Lin family's carriage right in front of hers. Seeing this long line, Jiang Peihuan frowned, thinking it would have been better to arrive later. Just then, a young eunuch quickly walked towards them, attracting everyone's attention. The young eunuch stopped in front of the general mansion's carriage. After bowing to Jiang Hong, the young eunuch said softly, "Great General, 1 a.m. acting on orders of His Highness King Cheng. 1 a.m. here to escort you, madam, and the young ladies into the palace." Upon hearing the young eunuch's words, Jiang Hong instinctively looked at Jiang Peihuan's carriage before smiling and saying, "Thank you for your kindness, please lead the way." Follow current novels on topnovelfool.com. Chapter 158. Entering the palace as he spoke, Jiang Hong glanced at Deputy General Liu. The latter took a step forward and stuffed a small pouch into the hands of the young eunuch. The pouch was very light and did not weigh much. The young eunuch touched it and knew that it was silver notes. The smile on his face deepened. The carriage from the general's mansion drove directly into the royal palace, bypassing the queue of other family carriages waiting for inspection. On witnessing this scene, many onlookers showed a hint of dissatisfaction. However, considering the notable merits of the Jiang family, no one dared to say anything. Still, there were murmurs of complaint. "We're all lining up, but the Jiang family gets special treatment." The one who made this remark was none other than Yin Xian. At that moment, Yin Xian was seated in Lin Mingyu's carriage. Following Yin Xin's gaze as she lifted the curtain, Lin Mingyao also spotted Jiang Peihuan's carriage. Seeing that Jiang Peihuan's carriage advanced directly ahead, without the need to queue or undergo inspection, Lin Mingyu's eyes were filled with complex emotions. Just then, the curtain of Jiang Peihuan's carriage was abruptly lifted. It wasn't Jiang Peihuan, but Jiang Ruyin who had raised the curtain. Jiang Ruyin had heard Yin Xin's voice, and, looking at Yin Xian seated next to Lin Mingyao, she said with a smug look, "There's nothing to be done. King Cheng is considerate of my elder sister, and can't bear to see her waiting in line. If you don't want to wait in line, you could also go and plead with Prince Qing." "You." Upon hearing Jiang Ruyin's words, Yin Xin's eyes filled with anger, but she was unable to rebuttal. Seeing the triumph in Jiang Ruyin's eyes, Yin Xian suddenly sported a faint smile. She didn't dare to offend Jiang Peihuan, but she wasn't afraid of Jiang Ruyin. "Jiang Ruyin, if one were you, I wouldn't dare to step outside now. A disgraced woman like you still dares to." "Ah." Yin Xin's words were cut off by a sudden intense pain in her hand that held the curtain. With the sudden pain, she instinctively released her grip, and the curtain was promptly lowered. Across from her, Jiang Peihuan elegantly retracted her whip, then turned to Jiang Ruyin and said, "There's no need to talk with these people." "Yes, elder sister." Upon hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Jiang Ruyin let go of the curtain. Meanwhile, Yin Xian in the carriage across was looking at the red mark on her back, her eyes full of gloom. Beside her, Lin Mingyao, having witnessed this scene, had an equally unpleasant expression on her face. As Jiang Peihuan's carriage was about to disappear into the distance, Yin Xian couldn't help but turn to Lin Mingyao and SSL. "Yao heir, Prince Qing is also presented today. Why hasn't he sent someone to escort you in first?" Lin Mingyu's expression turned even uglier when she heard Yin Xin's words. However, she softly replied, "Today, His Highness specially invited the Emperor to visit the palace. It's important for him. Let's not trouble him with these trivial matters." Yin Xian wanted to say something else, but seeing the frosty expression on Lin Mingyu's face, she shut her mouth. By now, Jiang Peihuan had already made her way into the palace. As she descended from the carriage, she noticed Xiao Nani standing there. The man was dressed in black, accompanied by Han Feng. "Master, eldest miss is here." Xiao Nani, previously enveloped in coldness, instantly softened upon hearing these words. Stepping forward, Xiao Nani acknowledged Jiang Hong and Shui Yin with a nod. "Great General, First Madam." "Greetings, Your Highness." "No need for such formalities." Upon seeing Jiang Hong and Shui Yin bowing to him, Xiao Nani quickly intervened. Once he stood upright, Jiang Hong turned to Xiao Nani and said, "Your Highness, we are grateful that you sent someone to usher us in early today." No need to thank me, great general. It's a minor matter. Although he was speaking to Jiang Hong, Xiao Nanyes' gaze was fixed on Jiang Peihuan the entire time. Shui Yin noticed this and gave a slight smile. Your Highness, did you come to see Huan Air? The palace grounds are quite scenic. One thought to give Huan Air a little tour. Upon hearing Shui Yan's words, Xiao Nani immediately responded. Shui Yan, with her forthright personality, chuckled at Xiao Nanyes' words and said, Then, Your Highness, please go ahead and show Huan around. Thank you, First Madam. Upon hearing this, Xiao Nani looked pleased. After a moment's thought, he gave Shui Yan a sincere bow. First Madam, one appreciate the food that you asked Huan Air to deliver to me. I am deeply grateful for your kindness. Seeing Xiao Nani bowing to her, Shui Yan quickly reached out to stop him. Your Highness, there's no need. She thought for a moment and then said softly, We're all family now. The food is nothing. Understood. Hearing this, Xiao Nani didn't say anything else, but his attitude towards Shui Yan became much gentler. Jiang Peihuan, who was standing at the side, watched the scene with a strange feeling in her eyes. Greetings, Your Highness. Jiang Rian saw Xiao Nani and bowed respectfully. Xiao Nani nodded and didn't say anything. Everyone from the Jiang family slowly walked away, leaving only Xiao Nani and Jiang Peihuan. Looking at the back of the Jiang family, Xiao Nani looked at Jiang Peihuan and asked, Why didn't Third Miss come today? Si Jin is still in the military camp. Hearing this, Xiao Nani nodded. He wanted to hold Jiang Peihuan's hand, but seeing the many people nearby, he restrained himself. His gaze towards her, however, was full of tenderness. Let's go, I'll show you around. After all, you might not get a full view later. When he said the last sentence, the man's voice was very low, but Jiang Peihuan still heard it clearly. She subconsciously looked at the man beside her, only to see Xiao Nani nodding. Seeing this, Jiang Peihuan didn't say anything, but followed Xiao Nani. In her previous life, Jiang Peihuan had also visited this palace once, accompanied by Xiao Juanhao. She remembered that when she came to this palace, her heart was full of excitement, and her eyes were filled with thrill. But now, the scenery remained the same. The person beside her was different, and so was her state of mind. It's only June, and there are lotus seeds already? As they arrived near a scenic river, Jiang Peihuan looked at the swaying lotus in the middle of the river with a bit of surprise. Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Xiao Nani also looked at the lotus seeds in the river. He chuckled, then suddenly leapt up. Jiang Peihuan looked up to see him flying over the river surface, bending down to pluck 2 lotus seeds, and then flying back to her side. Handing the lotus seed pods to Jiang Peihuan, Xiao Nani said softly, I remember you like eating lotus seeds. Jiang Peihuan did indeed like eating lotus seeds, especially fresh ones, but considering that everything in the palace belonged to the emperor, she couldn't help but speak out. Isn't it inappropriate to directly pluck this lotus pod? Follow current novels on topnovelfool.com. Chapter 159. The dragon's head breaks, don't worry, my imperial brother won't mind. Upon seeing Jiang Peihuan's expression, Xiao Nani understood her thoughts. As he peeled a lotus pod, he spoke. Hearing this, Jiang Peihuan subconsciously wanted to respond, but just as she prepared to speak, a hearty voice sounded near her ear. You brat, how do you know that one won't mind? Upon hearing this voice, Jiang Peihuan instinctively turned her head. A flash of bright yellow entered her vision. Jiang Peihuan recognized that it was Emperor Qi Ming. She quickly knelt and bowed. Greetings, Your Majesty. Long live Your Majesty. Greetings, my imperial brother. Seeing Emperor Qi Ming, Xiao Nani calmly paid his respects. Without waiting for Emperor Qi Ming to respond, he helped Jiang Peihuan to her feet. Imperial brother, if you scare Huan Air, one will empty your private treasury later. You brat, you still dare to threaten me? Hearing Xiao Nanyes' words, Emperor Qi Ming snorted coldly, but there was no trace of anger in his eyes. Emperor Qi Ming directly sat down on a stone bench to the side. Then he turned to Jiang Peihuan, who was standing nearby. After giving her a casual glance, he spoke in a low voice. You are Jiang Hong's eldest daughter? Yes, Your Majesty. Your servant girl is Jiang Peihuan. Jiang Peihuan did not meet Emperor Qi Ming's gaze directly, yet she did not avoid it either. Seeing this, Emperor Qi Ming's eyes showed a hint of admiration. You do bear some resemblance to your father's temperament. Do you like lotus seeds? Seeing the lotus pod in Jiang Peihuan's hand, Emperor Qi Ming continued to ask. Jiang Peihuan nodded, then spoke softly. When I was young, one liked to stay at my maternal grandmother's house. Qingzhou is known for its lotus seeds, which are very sweet, so I've liked them since I was a child. However, the soil and water in Jingdou are not suitable for growing lotus seeds, so the yield is quite low. When I saw this lotus pod just now, I was quite pleased. If you like them, I will gift you all the lotus pods in the river. Later, I will have them delivered to the general's mansion. Thank you, Your Majesty. Hearing Emperor Qi Ming's words, Jiang Peihuan hurriedly knelt down and bowed. Get up. Once Jiang Peihuan stood up, Xiao Nani handed her the peeled lotus seeds. In front of Emperor Qi Ming, Jiang Peihuan didn't reach out to accept them, but warned him with a glance. However, Xiao Nani appeared oblivious and directly took her hand, placing the snow-white lotus seeds in her palm. Seeing this, Emperor Qi Ming showed a touch of dissatisfaction in his gaze towards Xiao Nani. What's this? You only have eyes for your future queen, and fail to notice your own imperial brother. Wang Kuan, didn't you hear that my imperial brother wants lotus seeds? Get to preparing them immediately. Hearing Emperor Qi Ming's words, Xiao Nani responded without even lifting his head. When Wang Kuan, who was standing beside Emperor Qi Ming, heard this, he only smiled and did not say anything. However, Emperor Qi Ming gave Xiao Nani a stern look. Just as he was about to speak, he heard, Your son pays his respects to Your Majesty, my imperial father, and greets my imperial uncle. When Jiang Peihuan heard the voice, she also turned around and bowed. It was Xiao Juanhao, along with the other princes Xiao Zhenmo and Xiao Juni. At first glance, Xiao Juanhao saw Jiang Peihuan. Upon seeing her, his eyes revealed a complicated emotion. Although he quickly returned to his usual demeanor, Jiang Peihuan clearly noticed the fleeting shadow in his eyes. Shifting his gaze from Jiang Peihuan, Xiao Juanhao turned to Emperor Qi Ming and said, Imperial Father, this palace has been refurbished. How about I accompany you on a tour, and you can check if there are any deficiencies? Good. The primary reason for Emperor Qi Ming's visit today was to inspect the refurbishment of the palace. Hearing Xiao Zhenhao's words, he nodded in agreement. However, just as he was about to proceed, the emperor suddenly halted and turned towards Xiao Nani. Nani, you come along too. Oh, bring your future queen as well. Understood. Hearing Emperor Qi Ming's words, Xiao Nani casually responded. Other than Xiao Junmo, the other princes had complicated expressions in their eyes when they saw this scene. There was admiration as well as jealousy. Jiang Peihuan had always known that Emperor Qi Ming doted on Xiao Nani, but she didn't know that he would be so fond of him. As the group moved forward, Jiang Peihuan was walking at the back, and Xiao Nani was also standing behind her. Xiao Nani kept passing lotus seeds to Jiang Peihuan as they walked forward. Seeing this, Prince An, standing beside them, couldn't help but tug at Xiao Nani's sleeve. Uncle, can you also give me some? No, if you want to eat it, go pick it yourself. Hearing Prince An's words, Xiao Nani didn't even raise his head and said directly. Xiao Zhenmo watched as Xiao Nani passed lotus seeds to Jiang Peihuan again. His eyes filled with a hint of sadness. At this moment, Xiao Zhenhao's voice echoed in everyone's ears. Imperial Father, this Mingqing Hall has just been refurbished. Does it meet your expectations? Upon hearing the words Mingqing Hall, Jiang Peihuan couldn't help but look up. Before her was a grand main hall, its roof adorned with 8 5-clawed golden dragons sculpted from stone. At first glance, it was incredibly majestic and imposing. Emperor Qi Ming examined the Mingqing Hall in front of him carefully, with evident satisfaction in his eyes. How you've done an excellent job. Xiao Juanhao had been under Emperor Qi Ming's criticism for some time, so hearing this sudden praise, his eyes were filled with surprise. After bowing to Emperor Qi Ming, he said excitedly, Thank you, Imperial Father, for your praise. This is my duty. Imperial Father, watch out. Before Xiao Juanhao could finish speaking, everyone heard a loud bang. Xiao Junmo, standing next to Emperor Qi Ming, quickly pulled him aside upon hearing the sound. A large stone had fallen from where Emperor Qi Ming was standing. Upon closer inspection, it was the head of the dragon on the roof. It didn't stop there. Several loud noises echoed again, and everyone retreated as the heads of the golden dragons on the Mingqing Hall broke off. Seeing this, Jiang Paihuan's eyes revealed surprise. She knew her elder brother might set up something in the Mingqing Hall, but she didn't expect him to be so ruthless. Nevertheless, Jiang Peihuan was quite delighted in her heart. Now, she was curious about how Xiao Juanhao would solve this crisis. What's happening? Emperor Qi Ming looked at the dragon head that nearly hit him, his face pale. Xiao Juanhao looked at the scene in front of him, his eyes filled with shock. For some reason, he felt that this incident was somehow related to Jiang Peihuan. Meeting Xiao Junhao's gaze, Jiang Peihuan looked clueless. At this moment, Emperor Qi Ming glared at Xiao Juanhao with anger. Prince Qing, is this the result of your refurbishment? Follow current novels on topnovelfool.com. Chapter 160. Xiao Juanhao was scolded. Imperial father, please forgive me. It is my fault. Upon hearing Emperor Qi Ming's words, Xiao Juanhao subconsciously wanted to explain. But knowing Emperor Qi Ming's character, he eventually just admitted his mistake silently. However, Xiao Junhao's admission of guilt not only failed to appease Emperor Qi Ming, but rather worsened his mood. So, a simple admission of guilt can absolve you of all responsibility? You have repeatedly disappointed me. One give you opportunity after opportunity. And this is how you repay me? I accept my mistake. Facing Emperor Qi Ming's rebuke, Xiao Juanhao dared not argue, and could only bow his head in guilt. At this moment, Xiao Nani spoke up quietly. Imperial brother, this matter might not be related to Prince Qing. Hearing Xiao Nani's words, everyone present was stunned, especially Xiao Juanhao. Instinctively, he suspected Xiao Nani of scheming something, but Xiao Nani didn't look at him. Puzzled by the matter, Emperor Qi Ming was now focusing on Xiao Nani. You are actually defending him. I'm not speaking in favor of Prince Qing. I just find the situation odd. This Mingqing Hall is the main hall, and has always been maintained by specialists. Now all these 8 golden dragons have lost their heads. It's truly strange. Therefore, Imperial brother, in my view, this matter might not necessarily be Prince Qing's fault. Why don't we let the Imperial Astronomical Bureau investigate? Although he didn't understand why Xiao Nani was defending him, upon seeing Emperor Qi Ming's expression soften a bit, Xiao Juanhao quickly said, Imperial father, during the palace refurbishment, I have put in all my effort. As for the matter of the golden dragons, one truly do not know the reason behind it. One plead for your forgiveness. Hearing their words, Emperor Qi Ming fell silent. A moment later, he looked at Xiao Juanhao and said, Get up. After Xiao Juanhao stood up, Emperor Qi Ming turned to Wang Kuan and said, Go bring the people from the Imperial Astronomical Bureau. Yes. Wang Kuan quickly turned and left. Half a teacup's time later, an old man with a white beard appeared in front of everyone. He was the head of the Imperial Astronomical Bureau, Bai Yi. Upon seeing Emperor Qi Ming, Bai Yi quickly stepped forward and paid his respects. Your humble servant pays his respects to the Emperor. Long live the Emperor. First, take a look at how these golden dragons lost their heads. Yes, Your Majesty. Hearing Emperor Qi Ming's words, Bai Yi stood up and began to closely observe the Mingqing Hall. He nodded and shook his head from time to time, his hands constantly fiddling as if calculating something. Just as Emperor Qi Ming's patience was about to run out, he turned to him and said, Your Majesty, these golden dragons have lost their heads. It is. One dare not say. Bai Yi looked flustered, but as he spoke, his gaze kept drifting towards Xiao Juanhao. Seeing this, Xiao Juanhao suddenly had a bad feeling. Emperor Qi Ming frowned and spoke directly. Speak your mind. What are you afraid to say in front of me? Please forgive me, Your Majesty. Bai Yi immediately knelt down and continued. The reason why the golden dragon was lost their head was because His Highness, the Qing King, and your majesties the emperor are incompatible with each other. Therefore, if His Highness repairs this palace, not only will it affect the fate of the country, but it will also harm your majesty the emperor. Nonsense. Before Bai Yi could finish his words, Xiao Juanhao glared at him darkly, ready to strike, but was blocked by Xiao Nani. Facing Xiao Junhao's angry gaze, Xiao Nani spoke softly, "Prince Qing, how dare you act in front of the emperor? Imperial father, please forgive me, but this Bai Yi, he is clearly being manipulated." After saying this, Xiao Juanhao glared at Bai Yi. "Who instructed you to slander me?" "Your Majesty, one swear on my life that I am not talking nonsense. I am the emperor's son, and you dare to utter such nonsense. You dare say you're not talking nonsense, you. Although His Highness is the emperor's child, His Highness doesn't only have the emperor's blood. His Highness' birth mother is of low status." Before Xiao Juanhao could finish his words, Bai Yi quietly interrupted him. Upon hearing this, Xiao Junhao's gloomy eyes immediately turned murderous. Jiang Peihuan was sure that if it were not in the presence of Emperor Qi Ming, Bai Yi would have been killed by him already. "Xiao Juanhao, what are you doing? Are you trying to kill someone in front of me?" Emperor Qi Ming turned around and saw the murderous intent in Xiao Junhao's eyes. The latter quickly kneeled down and whispered, "Imperial father, I am innocent. That's enough. This matter ends here. Go back to your Prince Qing's mansion. Don't come to the palace without my order." Emperor Qi Ming interrupted Xiao Junhao's words before he could finish. At this moment, all the civil and military officials, all the influential people in the court has arrived and heard Emperor Qi Ming's words. Everyone had different expressions in their eyes. Some were worried, some were mocking. Among these people, only Lin Mingyao was full of worry when looking at Xiao Juanhao. But Xiao Juanhao didn't glance at Lin Mingyao. Instead, his eyes were clouded with gloom as he looked at Jiang Peihuan. He couldn't believe that this matter was unrelated to Jiang Peihuan, especially after Xiao Nani suggested consulting the Imperial Astronomical Bureau. He was more convinced that this was a trap set for him. In fact, Xiao Juanhao was right. This was indeed a trap laid by Jiang Peihuan. Meeting Xiao Junhao's gaze, Jiang Peihuan didn't look away. This trap was a gift from Xiao Juanhao to her in their previous life. In the past, the golden dragons in Mingqing Hall also had their heads severed. But Bai Yi had asserted that the person who was at odds with Emperor Qi Ming was Jiang Hong. Later, Jiang Peihuan found out that everything was part of Xiao Junhao's scheme. Today, she intended to let Xiao Juanhao experience the taste of his own medicine. "Your Majesty, one will take my leave now." Xiao Juanhao bowed to Emperor Qi Ming, and then turned around to leave. Due to the incident involving the golden dragon, Emperor Qi Ming was not in a jovial mood. Seeing this, everyone suggested that they should leave. Jiang Peihuan also left with Jiang Hong and Shui Yan. Just as Jiang Peihuan settled into the carriage, she heard the sound of horse hooves. Jiang Ruyan, who was by her side, lifted the curtain and saw Xiao Nani approaching. She quickly told Jiang Peihuan, "Elder sister, it's King Cheng." Upon hearing this, Jiang Peihuan looked out the window. Jueyin had already neared the carriage. The man on the horse looked at the occupants inside the carriage and whispered, "Don't worry about this. I've taken care of everything." Jiang Peihuan understood that Xiao Nani was referring to the golden dragon incident. Hearing his words, Jiang Peihuan nodded, then quietly said, "Thank you. Huan Air with me, you never need to say thank you." Seeing the man frown, Jiang Peihuan nodded. "Okay, I will remember." Hearing this, a hint of a smile appeared in Xiao Nanya's eyes. Just as he was about to speak, he saw Jiang Hong approaching. "King Cheng, we need to return home. You can move along now. There's no need to block the way." Follow current novels on topnovelfool.com. Chapter 161. The grievance of Jiang Ruyan. Although Jiang Hong didn't conclude his sentence, Xiao Nani was able to comprehend his intent from the inflection in his voice. Xiao Nani cast an intense glance at Jiang Peihuan before raising his whip. Seeing the man's figure disappear around the corner, Jiang Peihuan turned to Jiang Ruyan, instructing, "Lower the curtain." Once the curtain was drawn, Jiang Ruyan gazed at Jiang Peihuan with evident admiration. "Elder sister, Prince Chung is indeed very kind to you. Doesn't young Master Chow treat you well? Brother Chow is good to me, but what is it? Is there something wrong within the Chow family? Jiang Peihuan had only asked casually, yet she was shocked by the irritation that flitted across Jiang Ruiyan's eyes. Reflecting on the Chow family, with Chow Jun's gentle character, as well as the good nature of Master Chow and Madam Chow, Jiang Peihuan couldn't fathom what could be causing Jiang Ruiyan's dissatisfaction. Observing Jiang Ruiyan's silence, Jiang Peihuan lowered her voice to ask, "Did Master Chow or the Madam Chow show any dissatisfaction towards you?" "No, Uncle Chow and Auntie Chow are very kind to me. However, the old Macam of the Chow family doesn't like me." Old Madam Chow. Jiang Peihuan strained to recall, but she had no memory of this person. Inside the carriage of the general's mansion, Jiang Peihuan and Jiang Ruiyan were engaged in conversation, paralleled by Shui Yan and his spouse's dialogue. Reflecting on the recent events, Shui Yan shot an irritated look at Jiang Hong. "What on earth were you doing just now?" Seeing Shui Yan's expression, Jiang Hong rubbed his nose awkwardly and said in a low voice, "Aren't we not married yet? Don't think that I don't know what you're thinking." Hearing Jiang Hong's words, Shui Yan pinched his arm in annoyance. At this moment, a person dressed like a nanny suddenly walked up to Jiang Hong and his wife's carriage. "First Madam Jiang, our old madam has been feeling rather under the weather recently. She would like to see the second Mississippi. Could the second Miss perhaps visit our old madam?" The one who spoke was Nanny Chow, who was standing beside the old madam of the Chow family. As their carriage trailed closely, Jiang Peihuan and Jiang Ruiyan overheard Nanny Chow's conversation. Recognizing the voice, Jiang Ruiyan furrowed her brows, and Jiang Peihuan keenly sensed her mood shift. Turning to Jiang Ruiyan, Jiang Peihuan murmured, "This nanny works for the Chow family." Jiang Ruiyan nodded in agreement, replying softly, "She is one of old Madam Chow's attendants." Hearing this, Jiang Peihuan frowned. According to protocol, if old Madam Chow genuinely wished to see Jiang Ruiyan, the invitation should have been extended by Madam Chow, not a nanny. At that moment, Shui Yan's maid approached Jiang Peihuan's carriage. "Second Miss, the nanny from old Madam Chow's household has come to escort you. She would like you to pay a visit to the old madam." "I understand. I'll go immediately." Faced with the audience, Jiang Ruiyan had no option but to comply. Despite her inner displeasure, she began to lift the curtain of the carriage. However, just as she was about to descend, her hand was held by Jiang Peihuan. "Elder sister, I'll accompany you." In response to Jiang Ruiyan's puzzled look, Jiang Peihuan replied calmly. Finishing her words, Jiang Peihuan briskly lifted the curtain and addressed the elderly nanny. "Nanny Chow, since the old madam isn't feeling well, it is only proper as juniors that we pay her a visit. Conveniently, I'll accompany my younger sister. Let's head to the Chow mansion." Saying this, Jiang Peihuan directed her gaze towards the driver. As their carriage moved to the side, Jiang Peihuan looked towards Shui Yan's carriage and announced, "Father, mother, I'll accompany my younger sister to the Chow mansion. We'll return to our mansion later. Remember to show due respect at the Chow mansion." Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Shui Yan gently reminded her. Once Jiang Peihuan acknowledged with a nod, she let down the curtain. Witnessing the carriage pass by, Nanny Chow was taken aback. By the time she thought to intervene, the carriage had already covered some distance. On the way to the Chow mansion, Jiang Peihuan learned about the events that had transpired during her brief visit to Qingzhou. At first, knowing that Chow Jun was set to wed the young lady from the general's mansion, the esteemed old Madam Chow had been overjoyed. Yet, upon discovering that Jiang Ruiyan had been previously married and divorced, the old madam's delight turned into incessant nitpicking. Jiang Ruiyan was not yet married into the Chow family, but the old madam often used her as an excuse, sending her to the Chow residence to secretly pick on her. "Eldest Miss, you don't know how outrageous old Madam Chow is. She actually made the second Miss serve her meals. Even at home, the second Miss has never had to serve our own old madam." When Jiang Ruiyan's maid, Lan Er, said this, her eyes were full of anger. On hearing this, Jiang Peihuan, however, was not very angry, just a bit annoyed. She looked at Jiang Ruiyan and said coldly, You didn't tell second uncle and second aunt about this? You know my father's personality, elder sister. Old Madam Chow is an elder after all, and my father wouldn't say anything. As for my mother, if she knew, I'm afraid she'd stir up trouble. Upon hearing this, Jiang Peihuan remained silent. If she had guessed correctly, the old Madam Chow dared to act this way only because Jiang Ruyan never complained, and no one in the general's mansion said anything. Looking at Jiang Ruyan, Jiang Peihuan said lightly, although old Madam Chow is an elder, you and young Master Chow are not yet married, so she can't be considered your real elder. Moreover, it was the Chow family who took the initiative to marry you, not our general mansion. Therefore, you don't have to lower your stance too much. Even if you truly marry into the Chow family, you are not only the young madam of the Chow family, but also the second miss of the general's mansion. You also represent the general's mansion. By the time she finished speaking, the carriage had already arrived. Soon the driver's voice came from outside. Eldest miss, second miss, we've arrived. Then the curtain of the carriage was lifted, and Jiang Peihuan directly looked ahead. Seeing the gateway in front of her, Jiang Peihuan frowned. At this time, Nanny Chow smiled at Jian Peihuan and said, Eldest miss, second miss, let's go in. As she spoke, Nanny Chow took the lead to walk in. Seeing this, Jiang Peihuan's eyes were full of coldness. Wait a minute. Hearing Jiang Peihuan's voice, Nanny Chow stopped, turned her head and looked at her in confusion. Today my sister and I have come to visit the old madam. Does the Chow family's rules actually make guests enter through the side door? Eldest miss, you misunderstood. The rule of the Chow family is that the main entrance is for the master and young master. As for the second miss, since she's engaged to the young master, she will be the young madam of the Chow mansion in the future, so naturally, she can only enter through the side door like the madam. Is this also the old madam's idea? Looking at Nanny Chow, Jiang Peihuan raised her eyebrows. This, of course, it was the old Madam Chow's idea, but at this moment, Nanny Chow did not dare to say. Seeing her silence, Jiang Peihuan turned to Jiang Ruyan. The last few times you came, did you also enter through the side door? Follow current novels on Top Novel Fool.com. Chapter 162. Going to the Chow family. Jiang Ruyan didn't say anything, but the answer was pretty clear. Anger flashed in Jiang Peihuan's eyes. You used to be so bold at home, but outside, you're completely helpless. In the past, if Jiang Peihuan had spoken to her like this, Jiang Ruyan would have been filled with rage. However, after the previous incident, she knew that Jiang Peihuan truly cared for her. Hearing these words, she didn't get angry, but showed a hint of shame instead. Elder sister, it's my fault. Seeing Jiang Ruyan's agreeable attitude, some of Jiang Peihuan's anger faded. But when she turned to look at Nanny Chow, her eyes were cold. If these are the rules of the Chow family, then one have nothing to say. However, the Chow family has their rules, and we the Jiang family have ours. In our family, we don't enter through side doors during our visit. So today, we won't be visiting today. Farewell. With that, Jiang Peihuan got into the carriage. Seeing that Jiang Ruyan was still standing there, Jiang Peihuan ordered, Get in. Looking at the Chow mansion, there was a trace of indecision in Jiang Ruyan's eyes. But in the end, she got into the carriage. You guys. Nanny Chow watched the scene in disbelief. The carriage of the general's mansion was already heading back the way it came. Nanny, what should we do now? What should we do? Hurry up and tell the old madam. As she spoke, Nanny Chow hurriedly ran into the mansion. Chow mansion. The old Madam Chow was originally just an ordinary farmer's wife. She married old Master Chow because her family had some business that could provide for the Chow family's children's education. Although Master Chow had been an official for many years, the old madam still behaved like a farmer's wife. The main courtyard of the Chow mansion was occupied by the old madam. When Nanny Chow entered the courtyard, Madam Chow was fanning the old madam. This was typically a task for a maid, but the old madam despised Madam Chow's scholarly demeanor and never gave her a gentle look. Master Chow was a scholar who deeply valued filial piety. Even though he was aware that his mother was making his wife's life difficult, he did not dare to speak out. Put some effort into it, haven't you eaten? Old Madam asked. Madam Chow, not being physically strong, felt her wrist grow sore after fanning for an hour or two. Hearing the old madam's words, she responded softly, Mother, my wrist is really sore. Couldn't we let the maid fan you for a while? What are you suggesting? You're my daughter-in-law, I'm your mother-in-law. If you don't serve me, do you expect a maid to? Mother, one didn't mean that. Old Madam, bad news. At that moment Nanny Chow rushed in. Upon seeing Nanny Chow, the old madam sat up. However, when she didn't see a familiar figure, she frowned. Didn't I instruct you to bring that woman here? Where is she? Old Madam, she was already at the side door, but the eldest daughter of the Jiang family took her away. Nanny Chow quickly explained the situation. Hearing this, the old madam's eyes filled with rage. They've truly turned against us. What kind of education does the Jiang family provide for their daughters? She's a divorced woman. Does she believe she's a treasure? Since the old madam is so displeased with my sister, why not just cancel the marriage between the two families? A cold voice emanated from the doorway at that moment. It was Jiang Peihuan. Jiang Peihuan was about to leave with Jiang Ruyan, but she ran into Chao Jun on the way, and so returned. However, she didn't expect to hear such a conversation upon entering the old madam's courtyard. You, who are you? The old madam of the Chao family had always been in control, and this was the first time someone had addressed her in such a way. Her face flushed with anger. Jiang Peihuan disregarded the old madam and bowed to Madam Chow. Madam Chow, when the marriage was arranged, you and Master Chow personally came to ask for it. My second uncle and aunt believed that the Chow family was filled with scholars, so they agreed to the marriage. However, I didn't know that the Chow family would despise my sister so much. If that's the case, let's cancel the marriage. No, you can't. Before Madam Chow could respond, Chao Jun interjected. Glancing at Jiang Ruyan, then at Jiang Peihuan, Chao Jun said softly, Eldest miss, although you're Yun Er's sister, marriage is traditionally arranged by parents. It can't be cancelled just because you say so. My eldest sister can naturally make the decision for my marriage. At this moment Jiang Ruyan, who had been silent, suddenly spoke. The anger in Jiang Peihuan's eyes faded when she heard this. She turned her gaze towards Jiang Ruyan. Jiang Ruyan thought that Jiang Peihuan was in a difficult situation, so she stepped forward, standing right in front of her. We, the children of the Jiang family, are one. We share in each other's glory and in each other's loss. Therefore, if my elder sister is unwilling about this marriage, I'll go home and inform our parents right away. We can call off the engagement. Heh, you think you're still an innocent maiden. You're already a divorced woman. If you break off your engagement with my June heir, do you think you'll be able to marry again? Why do one have to get married? I'm the second daughter of the general's family. As long as the general's mansion exists, I won't starve. Even if my parents and elders think one bring them shame, one can cut my hair and become a nun. It's better than being tormented. As she finished, Jiang Ruyan turned to look at old Madam Chow. In that moment, Madam Chow suddenly held a great respect for Jiang Ruyan. Dropping the fan in her hand, she stepped forward, grasping Jiang Ruyan's hand tightly. Ruyan, don't say such things. June heir truly cares about you, and I truly like you too. By the time she finished, tears filled Madam Chow's eyes. Seeing her in tears, Chao Jun hurried over. Mother? Aunt, don't be sad. Madam Chow genuinely cared for Jiang Ruyan. Seeing her so distressed, Jiang Ruyan quickly stepped forward. Watching this scene, Jiang Peihuan remained silent. But old Madam Chow was infuriated. She didn't dare to say anything about Jiang Ruyan. After all, she hadn't married into the family yet. However, she was quite harsh towards Madam Chow. Kneel down. Hearing this, Madam Chow was about to kneel, but was held up by Chao Jun heir. Looking at her son standing in front of her, Madam Chow's eyes were full of tears. When he first arrived, Jiang Peihuan's words made Chao Jun realize something. After he and Jiang Ruyan get married, he would not only be the son of the Chow family, but also Jiang Ruyan's husband. He must protect her. He couldn't let Jiang Ruyan suffer from his own grandmother anymore. Placing Madam Chow behind him, Chao Jun directly kneeled before old Madame Chao. Follow current novels on Top Novelful.com. Chapter 163. Then you don't have to live anymore. Shortly after, he spoke in a low voice. Grandmother, if you have any dissatisfaction, just scold me, your grandson. But my mother has respected you for many years. You cannot grind her down without reason. I am my mother's child. If you are dissatisfied with her, take it out on me. Jun heir, please get up. Madame Chao, watching this scene, cried and reached out to pull up Chao Jun. Good, very good, foolish people. This is the good son you have raised. Old Madame Chao was so angry that her eyes were filled with blaze. Turning her head, she saw a teacup and grabbed it to throw at Madame Chao. Seeing this, Jiang Paihuan's eyes were filled with coldness. Lifting her leg, she kicked the teacup aside. The cup instantly shattered into pieces. And Madame Chao, looking at the broken cup, was filled with horror. Old Madame Chao, do you realize that if this cup had hit Madame Chao, she would have certainly been seriously injured today? Old Madame Chao was caught in the heat of the moment, regretted throwing the cup as soon as it left her hand. Seeing that the cup did not hit Madame Chao, she breathed a sigh of relief. But hearing Jiang Paihuan's words, her anger deepened. You uneducated girl, how dare you speak when your elders are talking? If that's the case, then I'll take my leave. Hearing this, Jiang Paihuan didn't want to say anything else, and simply spoke. As her voice fell, Jiang Paihuan left immediately. Seeing this, Jiang Rian bowed to Madame Chao and followed Jiang Paihuan. But Jiang Paihuan thought for a moment and looked at Jiang Rian. Regardless, Madame Chao has been good to you. She was just frightened, so you stay and take care of her. When you find Madame Chao is all right later, then you can go back to the mansion. Yes, elder sister. Jiang Rian was also somewhat worried about Chao Jun. So after hearing Jiang Paihuan's words, she stayed. Then, Jiang Paihuan left the Chao mansion alone. Jiang Paihuan left the carriage for Jiang Ruyan and prepared to ride a horse back to the general's mansion. But as she turned the corner, a fragrance came rushing towards her. Although Jiang Paihuan held her breath subconsciously, some of it entered her lungs, and suddenly she felt darkness before her eyes. When Jiang Paihuan woke up, her wrists were in pain, and she saw that her wrists and ankles were tied up. The room was pitch black, and Jiang Paihuan knew it was already night, because she saw someone standing by the window, but outside it was dark. Jiang Paihuan had just moved when a man's voice came. You're awake. Hearing this voice, Jiang Paihuan frowned. The man by the window turned around, and in the darkness, Jiang Paihuan saw his face. It was Xiao Juanhao. Xiao Juanhao slowly walked over to Jiang Paihuan. Prince Qing, I wonder why you had people kidnap me and bring me here? Don't you know why I'm looking for you? Jiang Paihuan. Before Jiang Paihuan could say anything, Xiao Juanhao continued. Why are you treating me this way? Hearing Xiao Junhao's words, Jiang Paihuan's eyes were full of complexity, her heart full of hatred, but her face showed none. I don't know what Prince Qing means. Jiang Paihuan, don't play dumb with me. Xiao Juanhao reached out and grabbed Jiang Paihuan's shoulder, looking directly into her eyes. The incident of the golden dragon head was orchestrated by Xiao Nani. You can't say it wasn't because of you. Jiang Paihuan, we were together for a while. Don't you have any old feelings for me? Our relationship was good back then. Why are you so heartless? Do you really have no feelings for me at all? You, feelings? Haha. Before Xiao Juanhao could finish speaking, Jiang Paihuan burst into laughter, as if she had just heard an amusing joke. Although Jiang Paihuan's face was filled with smiles, there was no hint of amusement in her eyes. Instead, it was filled with mockery. She looked at Xiao Juanhao, her eyes full of mockery as she spoke. Xiao Juanhao, when you were with me, was it really because of love? Or was it because you wanted to use me? Hearing this, Xiao Junhao's face changed. He suddenly looked at Jiang Paihuan with gentle eyes. One admit I was using you before, but if you are willing, I can treat you well in the future. You am not willing. Jiang Paihuan interrupted him before he could finish. Looking at the man before her, she said directly, even though I don't know what you're plotting, I won't have anything to do with you anymore. Fine, since that's the case, don't blame me for being heartless. Hearing Jiang Paihuan's words, Xiao Junhao's eyes turned dark and sinister. He stood up and slowly walked towards the door. Originally, one was planning to spare your life, but now there's no need. With that, he left the room. Watching his retreating figure, Jiang Peihuan frowned. She tried to move her wrists, but no matter how she tried, she couldn't break free. Moreover, the ring on her index finger had been taken away, leaving her no means to cut the ropes. Suddenly, a banging sound came from outside. Jiang Peihuan looked up and saw shadows on the windows. Xiao Juanhao was having the doors and windows sealed. Confusion filled her eyes. But soon she realized what was happening when she smelled the thick smoke. Xiao Juanhao was planning to burn her alive. Soon, flames were reflected in Jiang Peihuan's eyes. Outside the door, Xiao Juanhao stood, watching the flames rise, his eyes showing mixed emotions. The fire grew larger. Jiang Peihuan struggled in vain. Suddenly, she saw a vase on the table. With an idea, she slammed into the table, smashing the vase to the ground. With great effort, she grabbed a shard. Then she began to cut the ropes on her hands. As Jiang Peihuan cut the ropes, the door was kicked open. The person who entered saw her cutting the ropes, eyes filled with worry, but still grabbed her hand. Under the illumination of the fire, Jiang Peihuan saw Xiao Junhao's face. Her eyes were full of confusion. Go! As he spoke, Xiao Juanhao dragged Jiang Peihuan out. The flames grew so intense that it was almost impossible to open one's eyes. Jiang Peihuan forcefully shook off the hand holding her, drew the whip from her waist, and with a flick of her wrist, struck Xiao Junhao's arm. Are you insane? Holding his arm, Xiao Juanhao looked at Jiang Peihuan with furious eyes. At that moment, Xiao Junhao's eyes were filled with pain. He should have just burned Jiang Peihuan to death. But in that split second, when he saw the flames rising, he had impulsively rushed inside. Follow current novels on topnovelfool.com. Chapter 164. Xiao Juanhao injured, even he himself didn't know why. Just thinking that if Jiang Peihuan really died like this, his heart began to tremble. Jiang Peihuan didn't know what was on Xiao Junhao's mind. She only knew that this man wanted to burn her alive. In her previous life, he had already forced her to take her own life. In this life, he wanted to burn her to death again. Adding up both lives, if she didn't kill him, it would be hard to vent her anger. Jiang Peihuan, what are you doing? Initially, Xiao Juanhao could dodge her attacks, but Jiang Peihuan became more and more fierce. Xiao Juanhao had to fight back, and even didn't care to reveal that he knew martial arts. Ha! Seeing the man draw his long sword, a deeper look of mockery appeared in Jiang Peihuan's eyes. Other people might not know, but she knew better than anyone that Xiao Juanhao not only knew martial arts, but he was also very skilled. So Jiang Peihuan attacked mercilessly, but even so, she was still not a match for Xiao Juanhao. Seeing the fire getting bigger, Jiang Peihuan was preparing to leave, but she was not willing to let Xiao Juanhao go so easily. Just then a figure suddenly appeared. The man, holding a long sword, lunged at Xiao Juanhao. Xiao Juanhao instinctively dodged, but the man seemed to know his reaction, so his sword directly stabbed his shoulder. When pulling out the sword, the man kicked Xiao Junhao's body, right where he was injured, and Xiao Juanhao fell to the ground. Then the man picked up Jiang Peihuan and leaped away. After a few jumps, he landed with Jiang Peihuan in a street corner. Xiao Nani, why are you here? When she was hugged by the man, Jiang Peihuan knew it was Xiao Nani, so she didn't resist. Hearing her voice, Xiao Nani pulled off his face cloth. Looking at her, his eyes were full of concern. Are you hurt? Jiang Peihuan shook her head. As he spoke, Xiao Nani carefully looked over Jiang Peihuan's body. Seeing no visible injuries, he heaved a sigh of relief. Turning to Jiang Peihuan, Xiao Nani continued. I was going to the plum garden to see you, but after waiting a long time and not hearing from you, I learned from Yi Xiao that you went to the Chao family, but when I got there, your younger sister said you had left. I knew something had happened to you. He said it calmly, but Jiang Peihuan didn't know that Xiao Nani had used all his power and strength to find her. Seeing Jiang Peihuan fighting with Xiao Juanhao in the fire, Xiao Nani's first reaction was to kill Xiao Juanhao directly. Thinking of what happened tonight, Xiao Nani couldn't help but grasp Jiang Paihuan's hand. Why were you there? Xiao Juanhao wanted to kill me. Then she didn't know what got into him. But Xiao Juanhao wanting to kill her was a fact. Hearing this, Xiao Nanya's eyes instantly turned cold. His hand that was holding Jian Paihuan's hand tightened. I will settle this score with him today. You don't need to do anything else, I'll handle it myself. Faced with the man's puzzled expression, Jiang Peihuan whispered. No matter what, he is still a prince. If the emperor finds out, it will not be good for you. I don't care. Hearing Jiang Paihuan's words, Xiao Nani instinctively responded. He wanted to tell her something, but in the end he closed his mouth. Jiang Peihuan could feel that Xiao Juanhao wanted to say something to her. But since he didn't speak, she didn't ask. For a moment, both of them fell silent. A moment later, after a while, Xiao Nani looked at Jiang Peihuan and said, Let's go 111 take you back to the mansion. Okay. Jiang Peihuan nodded and began to walk forward. Xiao Nani raised his hand and whistled. Then Zhui Yin appeared before them. Xiao Nani got on the horse first, then reached out to Jiang Peihuan. Seeing the man's extended hand, Jiang Peihuan took it, and with a pull, she was seated right in front of Xiao Nani. The horse headed straight for the general's mansion. Behind them, in the fiery light, a man covered in blood was carried out of the room by Pei Wu. Your Highness. Setting the man down, Pei Wu's eyes were full of concern, but no matter how much he called out, Xiao Juanhao gave no response. Pei Wu saw the wound on Xiao Junhao's shoulder, and his face changed instantly. Quick, back to the mansion, guard Pei. Should we call a doctor? No. Without a second thought, Pei Wu hurriedly responded. After a moment of silence, he looked at a guard and said, You go and get Miss Lin, be quick. Yes. When Xiao Juanhao was brought to the Prince Qing mansion, Lin Mingyao had also gotten down from the carriage. Pei Wu stood by Xiao Junhao's bedside, and seeing Lin Mingyao enter, he rushed forward. Miss Lin, His Highness is injured. We can't alert the Emperor about this, so I have no choice but to find you. Lin Mingyao didn't say anything. She looked at Xiao Juanhao. Seeing the man's condition, her eyes were filled with displeasure. Why is he injured like this? It's all because of the eldest daughter of the Jiang family. After that, Pei Wu briefly explained what had happened. Hearing that Xiao Juanhao had rushed into the fire to save Jiang Peihuan, Lin Mingyio's eyes became dark and cold. However, she quickly regained her composure and looked at Pei Wu, speaking coldly. I will treat His Highness now. Don't let anyone disturb me. Yes. Pei Wu immediately left the room and guarded the door. After he left, Lin Mingyao removed Xiao Junhao's clothes, and seeing the wound, her eyes were filled with worry. Jiang Peihuan, you are really ruthless. Lin Mingyao didn't know who caused the wounds on Xiao Juanhao, assuming it was Jiang Peihuan. Carefully helping Xiao Juanhao remove his clothes, Lin Mingyao heard a sound and looked down to see a red gemstone ring on the floor. It was the one Xiao Juanhao had taken from Jiang Peihuan's finger. Picking up the ring, Lin Mingyio's eyes were filled with mixed emotions. She recognized the ring, having seen it many times on Jiang Peihuan's hand. Your Highness, why did you keep her ring? Lin Mingyao asked softly, but the man on the bed had no way to answer her. Lin Mingyao set the ring aside, and then began treating Xiao Juanhao. By the time dawn came, Xiao Juanhao finally opened his eyes. Seeing the person lying on the edge of the bed, Xiao Junhao's eyes held a glimmer of surprise, but realizing it was Lin Mingyao, he suddenly felt a touch of disappointment. Noticing his own disappointment, Xiao Junhao's eyes darkened. Xiao Juanhao, did you actually hope that it would be that woman? Your Highness, are you awake? Hearing the sound, Lin Mingyao immediately opened her eyes. Yao Er, you've worked hard. Follow current novels on Top Novel Fool. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.